Welcome to Ichiraku Ramen, and thank you for joining me for another journey into the world of shinobi. Before we begin, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who listens, supports the channel, and enjoys these stories. Today's story is part 3 of Positive Intervention. In this story, Naruto's childhood was filled with loneliness. Ignored by the village, feared by the people, and forced to grow up alone. But what if things had gone differently? What if someone had stepped in before the damage was done? At the age of 7, Jiraiya of the Sannin makes a decision that will change Naruto's life forever. Instead of leaving him behind in Konoha, Jiraiya takes Naruto on the road, raising him as his apprentice and teaching him the true ways of a shinobi. For 5 years Naruto trains under the legendary Toad Sage, learning powerful jutsu, discipline, and what it truly means to protect the people he cares about. When Naruto finally returns to the Hidden Leaf at age 12, he is no longer the lonely prankster the village remembers. He has become something far more dangerous. The student of Jiraiya. This is a fan-made story inspired by the world of Naruto. All characters and the original universe belong to their respective creators. This narration is created for entertainment purposes as part of a transformative storytelling experience. The story itself was written by Stolen Hawk 22, and full credit goes to the original author. If you would like to read the original version, the link to the story is included in the video description below. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy. The Forest of Death Part 2. Team 7 reported for training at 6 a.m. as they had been doing since their brief break after the forest. Yamato took it easy on them, focusing strictly on mental exercises rather than physical ones. If they were leaving for a real C rank, they wouldn't be able to afford losing any chakra beforehand, so he wouldn't waste any of theirs now. 2.5 hours of tactics, formations, and hand sign development later, and Team 7 had their break. One 30-minute lunch was all they were given before their test. A mock C-rank mission would begin. They sat in the grass and enjoyed a healthy lunch, enjoying each other's company. They had discussed their plans for the mission, according to the information provided to them the night before. They were as ready as they could be, with many different plans and backup plans ready to go. When noon rolled around, Yamato interrupted their light conversation. Okay, Team 7, you asked for this test, so you will be doing it on your own. They all nodded, no surprise there. You have been given the parameters of the mission in your scroll. Watch each other's backs, and good luck. He gave them a healthy smile. He hoped they passed the test. It was of Kakashi's invention, and Yamato hadn't even been able to read the scroll. All his former captain had told him was that they were to head back in the forest, and it would be over by sunrise. Right, Naruto took charge. Standard formation, Gear 3. Sasuke took point, Sharingan blazing. 3 Tomo took more chakra to operate, so he hadn't gained any endurance with them. He was still limited to an hour and a half straight, if he had full chakra. Hinata was in the middle, Byakugan activated. She had gained quite a bit of endurance with her own dojutsu, and would be cycling it on for 15 minutes, and off for 5. Naruto brought up the rear, with 2 clones flanking Hinata. The 3 genin and 2 clones took off at a moderate pace. Much too fast for civilians to keep up, but not fast enough to alert any of the village's hidden protectors. Training Ground 44 was on the other side of the village, and they wanted to get there as quickly as possible, as the journey outside the forest would be much easier than the trek inside. Every minute or so, Naruto would call for a status report. Hinata hadn't seen anything suspicious with her Byakugan extended to max range. Sasuke's Sharingan hadn't seen anything suspicious either, so they kept their pace. The trip across the village was completely uneventful, save Naruto stopping for a split second to make a shadow clone. The clone jumped down off the rooftops, and helped an elderly lady cross the street. They kept going. The 3 landed short of the fence right outside of the forest. Naruto didn't sense anything, and his teammates didn't see anything, so they settled down for one last safe discussion. Alright, Naruto said, there's no shot the mission will just be delivering the scroll. We've already spent 2 weeks in the forest, so it'll be something much tougher. The forest is a no-go for other genin and lower. It will likely be something dangerous if they're sending us where the weaklings can't get caught in the crossfire. Sasuke said, though there wasn't any venom in his voice. Naruto rolled his eyes at calling the others weaklings. It could be other ninja or more dangerous animals. Do any of the Jonin sensei have summons? Hinata chipped in. Kakashi has dogs, but they're not any more dangerous than some of the animals in the forest. They are excellent trackers though, so hiding probably won't work. Sasuke was aware that it was Kakashi's test, but the Jonin hadn't told him if he himself would participate. It was best to assume the worst when Kakashi didn't reply. They want to test if we're ready for a C rank. We won't explicitly be tasked with fighting other ninja on one, but the possibility is there. I wouldn't be surprised if another team is going to be hunting us, likely with one of Kakashi's ninkin to sniff us out. Naruto scratched the back of his head as he thought. They know we have the skills, so what they'll be testing is if we can use them properly. They'll test our decision-making skills, maybe even try and split us up. Sasuke, be prepared for Itachi's name or image to be involved somehow. The Uchiha scowled, but Naruto shot him a, not now, look. Hinata, I wouldn't be surprised if another Hyuga, maybe even Neji, is involved. They're going to try and get you away from us to test your resolve. Don't waver. You can do it, both Sasuke and I believe in you. Hinata felt a warmth flow through her body, so much so that she almost shivered. She felt, in that moment, that she could accomplish anything. She was worried about her captain though. Naruto, you've covered the two of us, she gestured to herself and Sasuke. What will they try to do to you? Sasuke replied. He knew Naruto probably wouldn't tell the truth. The Kyuubi, probably with a genjutsu. They'll use your treatment before you left with Jiraiya, and even a little bit now, against him. Sasuke smirked. It won't work though, he's not the same hothead he was a year ago, and it'd have to be a strong genjutsu to truly trap him. He truly believed that whoever had the misfortune of taking on Naruto would regret it. Hinata nodded in agreement. Naruto smiled at Sasuke, even though the dark-haired boy wasn't looking at him. It was nice having a best friend. What the grumpy bastard said. I can handle it. We should focus on staying together. They'll likely engage one-on-one and try to steer us apart. Our goal is to steer the fight back towards each other, where our teamwork can be factored in. We're unbeatable when we work together. Whether that was true or not, Naruto believed it, and so did his teammates. Alright, they're probably watching this right now, but if Hinata can't spot them, they're far enough away that they can't hear us or see what I'm about to do. I'm going to prep several seals for each of you. Use them at your own discretion. When I'm done, we'll use standard formation B, gear 4. Clear? Naruto spoke even as he worked, laying out several seals on blank tags, using his ink release method. Yes, both Hinata and Sasuke replied. Sasuke didn't mind Naruto making the calls, so long as he didn't mess up, and Sasuke got to fight. When they had settled the tags in their packs, they stood. Naruto formed 8 clones. 2 returned to Hinata's flank, and 3 fanned out on each side, about 10 meters away from the group, covering their sides, front, and the area in between. Naruto remained in the back of the formation, ready for everything. Being in the forest meant that they could move considerably faster than before. The only problem was, they didn't make it 15 steps before traps began to spring. Kunai began flying at them from all directions, and poison gas sprang up on their left. They immediately moved right, as Naruto received the memories of the clones that were killed. A large log riddled with spikes came swinging down at them as they evaded the other traps, and they were forced to roll underneath. A few kunai came flying at them, this time much faster. That meant they were thrown, not sprung. Naruto processed this information, and responded before they even dodged the kunai. Diamond C, Gear 5, Move. 12 clones sprang into existence, forming a diamond around the trio. In the center, Naruto was in the lead, Sasuke on his left heel, Hinata on his right. His heart was racing now as the adrenaline that accompanied battle raced through his veins. Team 7's pace increased yet again, just coming shy of their all-out sprint. Whenever a clone was destroyed, Naruto simply summoned another one to take its place. This formation was designed for ambushes. It was more chakra-intensive than any other team in the Leaf could handle, given the number of clones needed, which was the reason Naruto had to invent it himself. The formation wasn't the best for traps though, as the clones were close enough that the actual team members were still in the line of fire if one was sprung. The genin moved through the forest quickly, not a word being uttered as Naruto steered them strictly through hand signs. He was acting on instinct here, ignoring some of the signs that Sasuke and Hinata were undoubtedly picking up on, in favor of listening to his gut. It hadn't steered him wrong. Yet, the attacks and traps died down, and Naruto formed and dispelled a single clone nearly instantly. The message was received, and the diamond of Naruto's quickly took 3 hard steps to form a circle, and used their chakra chains to form a barrier. Team 7 was now protected in a nearly impenetrable dome, though they were stuck in place as long as it was active. The trio took a knee, all facing the direction they had run from. They've pushed us sideways. They should be attacking the barrier any second to test it. We've got to identify how many, and keep track of their skills. Sasuke? Haven't seen any. Let's counter-attack and force them to reveal their hand. Naruto didn't even bother acknowledging. He asked Sasuke, so they were going to do what he said. No discussion needed. Hinata? Naruto was just starting to get his breathing under control. 2 ninja. Brace! She yelled, seeing them run through hand signs. The 3 genin felt the barrier rumble as they saw a large fire dragon crash into it. A flash of purple came flying at them, as a scantily clad woman attempted to break through using a kunai. A large water bullet smacked into the barrier from their right at the same time. It didn't cause the ruckus that the fire dragon did, but the water seemed to stick along the barrier and the ground outside of it. Naruto briefly took into account the attacks. His water release jutsu should be powerful enough to overtake the fire release user. The water user could be a problem though. They didn't have a single earth release jutsu among the 3 of them, and the viscosity of that water could be an issue. They couldn't afford to get trapped in it. There's a 3rd ninja weaving a genjutsu over us. Naruto was never more thankful for Hinata's Byakugan. All 3 of them pulsed their chakra forcefully, and their perception returned. Both ninja were a few meters to the left of where they had been seeing them. The genjutsu was so subtle and simple that Naruto hadn't even felt it. He growled in frustration. I'm breaking the barrier. Sasuke, fireball directly at the sticky water on the ground and go after the water user. Don't bother with fire. Hinata, find the genjutsu user and engage hand to hand. I have the fire user. On go. Naruto barked out. His intensity was palpable, and his teammates were forced to match it, or feel the adverse effects of his chakra leaking in the area. 3, 2, 1. Sasuke flew through hand signs, and Hinata crouched, ready to take off after the shinobi hanging out in the background. Naruto put his hand into his cross seal. Go! Like lightning out of a bottle, all 3 leapt into action. Sasuke's timing was perfect. The great fireball smashed into the ground, obliterating the syrupy water, and the grass it stuck to. The size of it gave him cover, and he used it to make his way towards the water-release shinobi. Hinata sprinted for her target. The purple-haired kunoichi launched several kunai at her, but she did not falter. Before the kunai could reach her, they were struck out of the air by the kunai launched by a Naruto clone, one specifically tasked with watching over her. She swallowed as she sprinted, throat dry. She trusted Naruto with her life, and he hadn't let her down yet, but it was still nerve-wracking to intentionally ignore sharp objects speeding towards you. She pushed the thoughts from her head, as adrenaline flowed throughout her body, and tried to focus on her task. The genjutsu user was hidden amongst the trees, crouched on a high branch. Her Byakugan picked up on his details. Small chakra pool, though definitely a chunin considering its refined nature. He had 2 massive kunai strapped to the back of his chunin vest, crossing to make an X. It also picked up less relevant information, like his shorter stature, his spiky black hair, and the white bandage that bridged his nose. She moved quickly but sharply to intercept him, much like the jaguar they had met a month ago. She saw his hands weave signs, and the chakra that accompanied his genjutsu, and dispelled it the moment that it entered her system. Inwardly she was pleased with herself. Genjutsu was one of the main causes of death for genin out in the field. Skills and physical abilities didn't matter if you were stuck in an illusion while your body went unguarded in reality. The real purpose of the genjutsu was revealed shortly after she allowed herself to feel good. She had to slow down to make the ram sign and dispel the genjutsu. It was just enough for the chunin to flee his cover and draw his weapons. His hand-to-hand disadvantage was now cut down as he gained reach in the form of his blades. Hinata couldn't hurt metal with her taijutsu. On the other side of the small clearing that Team 7 had settled into, Sasuke danced with his opponent. Sasuke had the Chikuto out that Naruto had helped him seal, and was engaging in a kenjutsu battle with his opponent, a chunin wielding a large curved kunai, with an attached chain. Sasuke definitely had the upper hand on the chunin with the speed and reach of his blade, paired with his Sharingan's ability to read movements. The chunin, however, kept slipping away and resetting the bout, before Sasuke could land anything solid. Their blades clashed a few more times, Sasuke being the aggressor. His opponent was wearing a bandana forehead protector, with hair completely covering one of his eyes. Sasuke's best bet was that the eye had been destroyed in battle. A seasoned shinobi then, the shinobi seemed to stay away from attacks, relying purely on blocks. His style was beginning to become infuriating. His Sharingan couldn't read the opponent's movements if the opponent wasn't moving. Sasuke leapt back, planting his sword into the ground, and flying through hand seals before his momentum even halted. Lightning release. Thunderclap arrow, Sasuke said with a growl. It was one of his only medium to long-range lightning jutsu, so it would have to do. The lightning arced wildly, but tightly towards his opponent, who was running through hand seals himself. Water release, gunshot. It was barely more than talking volume, and in the chaos of the forest, Sasuke could barely make out what was said. He smirked nonetheless, as his Sharingan caught all the signs, and read his opponent's chakra flow, committing the jutsu to memory. It was one of Naruto's favorites, but Sasuke had never managed to catch the full set of hand signs and chakra molding with his Sharingan activated. The large ball of water sped forward briefly, before enveloping the lightning. The force of Sasuke's attack killed the momentum of the counter-attack, and evaporated much of the water. The remains of the jutsu fell to the ground, but it had done its job. When the jutsu cleared, his opponent was gone. Sasuke cursed, and made his way to where Naruto was fighting. Naruto was sure the kunoichi was absolutely nuts. He had pulled out a number of tricks on her, and it only seemed to excite her more as he did so. His twin Dao blades, the ones that seemed to belong to the first Azukage, had laid a few cuts on her. He was starting to think it was intentional, as she kept taking a sample of the blood and then licking it. Definitely crazy. Her fire attacks were powerful and quickly molded, which is why he had chosen to go the Kenjutsu route. She was extremely fast though, and kept launching snakes out of her sleeves. She was slippery too, dodging and weaving in ways that almost seemed inhuman. He had no doubt in his mind that this had been Orochimaru's student, based on everything Jiraiya had told him about the man. He was ready to double down on his efforts, when she suddenly retreated. He sported a confused look, when Hinata landed next to him, coming out of the trees. He didn't even need a hand sign to ask his question. I managed to land a gentle fist strike on my opponent's forearm. He retreated immediately after, as he was struggling to hold his blade. I did not pursue since we were split up. Naruto nodded. She had done the right thing. My opponent retreated too, though I didn't manage to wound him in any significant way. Sasuke said, the scowl on his face betrayed the even nature of his tone, as he walked out from behind a tree. Same here, I actually think she let me cut her a few times for fun. A shudder ran down his spine. It seems like they're using hit and run tactics. I think they're just trying to make this as hard as possible, rather than outright trying to ruin our mission, ya know. It's barely been an hour. We should move out of range so that they have a harder time tracking us, and go over the information we acquired, and come up with a new plan. Sasuke said. Naruto nodded. Sasuke didn't often make the plans for the team, but when he did, they were always sound. He had no problem relinquishing control to his best friend. We continue moving west then. If we try to make a hard break for the tower, they'll come at us full strength, so we'll move parallel until we have a plan. Scouting formation. Gear 4. They nodded. They had their formations and speeds down pat, and they trusted Naruto to plan properly. They moved at speeds fast enough to avoid any of the predators, both plant and animal, that inhabited this part of the forest. This section wasn't particularly dangerous, which was part of the reason that Naruto chose it. They still had over 90% of the distance to cover to get to the tower, and 90% of the time to do it. As they sat down to discuss what they had learned from their fights, Naruto's clones branched out to form his patented Forest of Death camp security. A healthy distance away, their opponents also gathered. Kakashi, what the fuck? Katestu yelled. His forearm was still numb, and he hadn't regained the ability to properly grip his weapon. Kakashi lazily tilted his in question, though he knew exactly what the Chunin was complaining about. No shot, those three are genin. I have to agree. Their skill level is definitely chunin. Kotetsu's partner agreed. Izumo had fought the Uchiha, and it had not been easy. I dunno boys, I really enjoyed it. The little blonde brat wasn't all that. Anko said. Kakashi just shrugged. What do you mean? Those aren't some genin we're supposed to scare. The only reason we didn't lose is because it was their first taste of a real battle. Kotetsu continued to complain. Relax, Scarface, you two didn't even fight as a team this time around. Next time we won't split you up, and you can use your teamwork to your advantage. The purple-haired Kunoichi displayed a twisted smile. She was so looking forward to fighting them again. You could have told us they all were Kekkei Genkei users, Kakashi. Izumo mentioned. Kakashi shrugged again. Must have slipped my mind. He drawled lazily. He hadn't given any information on the opponents to Team 7. He didn't see why a team of 2 Chunin and a Tokubetsu Jonin would need info on genin. Especially ones that were over a decade their junior. Whatever man, just summon Pakun again so we can track them down. Kakashi lifted his head expectantly. He looked at Kotetsu out of the corner of his lone eye. You're kidding. Oh, I never joke, the Jonin said, sarcastically. Fine, will you please summon Pakun to help us track them? Kakashi bit his thumb. You know, you should really develop some tracking skills, it might help you get promoted. Kakashi said. The blood smeared onto all 5 fingers, and hand signs summoned his favorite dog. Pak, can you help them locate Sasuke again? His tone was polite. Sure, boss, Pakun said, and he inhaled deeply, trying to catch the scent. It seems like he's well, everywhere? Kakashi smiled under his mask. Those clever, cute little genin. Naruto thought that Kakashi might get involved, and so he sent his clones out, carrying Sasuke's dirty laundry that he unsealed from God knows where. He was trying to throw off the scent, much to Sasuke's chagrin. Naruto hadn't even asked if he could take it, nor had he explained how or when he got it. Kakashi would be able to track Naruto by scent, but Naruto didn't believe he would do it himself. It would either be Pakun, who only knew Sasuke's by heart, or not at all. He was hoping the team they just fought didn't have any strong sensors. Their discussion had provided results, and they had a better game plan moving forward. After an hour's rest, they still hadn't been attacked, so Naruto had them begin their hike towards the forest. This time they were moving at gear 2, hardly much more than a light jog. He knew the opposition would find them, and he didn't want to lead them into a trap at full speed. Standard Formation B was in effect, the clones fanning out to the sides and front to warn of any danger. They made it 2 more kilometers when a kunai flew past Naruto, leaving a small cut on his cheek. Orders didn't need to be issued, his team knew what to do. Sasuke rushed for the genjutsu user, having found out he was slower than the water user. Naruto went after the crazy snake lady again, determined to take her down and prove his sensei was the superior Sannin. Hinata moved towards the water user. That was the worst matchup for them, but they firmly believed that Hinata could at least hold out until either of the boys had won. This time, however, the opponents didn't break up. The Kunoichi maintained her distance from the other 2, but kept within visual range. The 2 Chunin were the problem. They stuck together like glue, and their flow of movements together, as well as the linked kunai swords, indicated that they would be a greater threat together. Naruto took this information in, and made a split-second decision. He put 2 fingers to the interlocking seals on his right thigh, his own invention, and overcharged chakra into them. Just like the first time Jiraiya taught him to use a storage scroll, there was a huge explosion of chakra smoke. It wouldn't last as long as a traditional smoke bomb, but it made for a hell of a distraction. White-blue switch, he ordered, and the team moved seamlessly. When the smoke cleared, Hinata was standing where Naruto had been, while Naruto was now near Sasuke, ready to take on the paired Chunin. Hinata, he said, looking over his shoulder at her. You got this, ya no. He yelled, and she believed him. The purple-haired Kunoichi cackled, and grinned maniacally. A little bit of Hinata's confidence left her, but not more than what she gained from Naruto's support. Naruto turned back to his opponents, placing his trust in Hinata. He glanced at Sasuke, and they both grinned, and sprang into action. Naruto went after the genjutsu user, and Sasuke the water user. They both attacked with kunai in hand, sparks flying as metal clashed with metal upon their first strike. Both genin sported even wider grins as they turned and left their guard wide open for their opponents. The Chunin were a little bit confused, but were nothing if not opportunistic. They simultaneously went for strikes on their open opponents, aiming to maim seriously, but not kill or cripple. Their faces contorted into confusion when the opposite genin was the one to block their strikes. That had been planned? Both Chunin were back on their heels as the genin viciously struck at them with kunai. Naruto slashed at the bandanaed Chunin, then spun, using the speed built to attack with the kunai in a stabbing motion. Predictably, it was blocked, and he spun back while leaping into the air. Mid-jump, he unsealed several kunai and launched them all at Izumo. The Chunin had to concede 2 scrapes in order to avoid taking the full brunt of several others. As Naruto was coming back towards Earth, he formed a single hand seal and 2 shadow clones came into existence. The first locked arms with him and threw him at Sasuke's opponent, Kotetsu, while the other began forming long-since mastered hand signs. Sasuke was perfectly in rhythm with Naruto and his clones, and shifted away from the genjutsu user as soon as Naruto was thrown towards him. He knew what the blonde's clone was going to do before he did it. He didn't even have the Sharingan when he first saw the hand signs Naruto was using, and he didn't need it now to recognize them. He began forming his own familiar hand signs with a smirk on his face that threatened to turn into a genuine smile. Fire release, flame bullet. There was no use in hiding the name of the technique, obvious as it was. Toad oil bullet, the clone yelled. The 2 jutsu collided mid-air. The chakra was perfectly balanced, and the effect immediate. Oil spread the now white-hot flames all over the forest. Izumo saw the combination coming, and was inwardly terrified. He raced through hand seals as fast as he could, substituting as far as possible. He knew it wouldn't be far enough, and was flying through more signs. A water wall sprung up on all sides. He struggled to enclose the top so that oil couldn't find its way in. Luckily the Chunin had made it far enough away that his water formation wall didn't take the brunt of the attack. Unluckily, his vision was blocked while the wall was in place, and he was nearly out of chakra, as there wasn't a water source nearby. When the wall receded, more from a lack of chakra fueling it than choice, the Uchiha was flying at him from the left, arm outstretched. The genin's fist collided with his jaw, and sent him flying to the right, to awaiting Naruto. The clone caught Izumo with a hand to his back, and the Chunin felt his body lock up, and his chakra get disrupted. It was a strange feeling, almost like his whole body had fallen asleep, the pins and needles feeling rolling all over nerves. His chakra felt as if it were vibrating hard. He could access it, but it was completely out of his control. Ink release, paralysis seal complete. Go help the real me. Can't afford to get caught in a genjutsu. The clone said. Sasuke wasn't listening though, as he was already on his way to help Naruto. The clone sighed, and used what chakra he had left to water down the forest, and prevent a wildfire. Naruto was trying to get in close, and keep Kotetsu busy. He didn't want the genjutsu user to have a chance to weave signs. However, when the Chunin pulled out a giant conch mace and threw it at him, he was forced to dodge. When he regained sight of Kotetsu, he was finishing up his hand seals. Naruto felt the chakra fall upon him, and a giant meteor was suddenly falling right at him. He stayed calm, just as Jiraiya taught him, and breathed deeply. When he exhaled, he dispelled the chakra that he had been building up, along with the genjutsu. The fight was already over though, and Naruto sighed. Sasuke held a kunai to the Chunin's neck. Yield or suffer the consequences. TCH. I yield. He grumbled. Sheesh, you guys are monsters. Frickin' Hitaki. The genin didn't hear him though, they were already on the move to Hinata, who had been pushed back quite a ways. When they got a visual on her, she was sitting down, crawling back until she bumped into a tree. There were small cuts all over her body, including on her brand new jacket and pants. The purple-haired Kunoichi was walking towards her, kunai in hand. Well, it seems we found the weak link. Anko said. Please don't hurt me. I'm just a genin. Hinata stuttered, her face was red. Oh, I won't make it hurt too much. She licked her lips and stepped forward, intending on running the kunai over the Hyuga's face, just to scare her a little more. When she reached her arm out, the girl snapped out quickly, grabbing her wrist with her left hand. Her right hand struck Anko's right shoulder, rendering the arm useless. Before the Tokubetsu Jonin could recover from her surprise, Hinata ducked her shoulder under the limp arm, releasing her grip. She slashed her left hand and stuck the kunoichi in the kidney. She laid off that blow a little bit, but there would still be a laceration. Finally, Hinata shifted her weight back to the right and struck her in the left thigh. She heard a yelp of pain, but only felt slight remorse. Leaf nin or not, you didn't attack Naruto and get away with it. Not on her watch. Before Anko could retaliate, Sasuke sped in front of her. The two made eye contact, and the last thing Anko remembered was seeing the whirling tomo of the Sharingan. The crazy snake lady was laying on the ground screaming. Team 7 all took a moment to catch their breath. What the hell did you do to her? Katetsu asked, Azumo slung over his shoulder, still paralyzed. He was the only one who wasn't completely incapacitated. Genjutsu. I showed her Orochimaru. Don't worry, she won't remember it. Sasuke said quickly. That's kind of a dick move. Azumo said, rubbing his jaw. Naruto had already released the seal his clone had placed, not wanting to keep a comrade down for too long. It's a mission, not a spar. Besides, the Sharingan will make sure she doesn't remember ever seeing Orochimaru, so it's just temporary to keep her from stopping us. Naruto said, moving back to his team. Nice moves. He whispered to Hinata. She blushed. Alright, well, can you two take care of her? We're kinda busy, ya know? Naruto asked. The Chunin nodded, dismayed that they failed so outright. Naruto turned to his team, standard trap formation. Gear 6. Naruto ordered. The edge was back in his voice after awkwardly asking the Chunin to take care of Anko. 10 clones came into existence, and took off nearly full speed, sweeping the area. The regular formation of Sasuke in the lead, Hinata in the middle flanked by 2 clones, and Naruto leading from the back took off, leaving the Chunin in awe. Anko finally stopped writhing in pain and came to. Ow, what the fuck was that? She yelled. I'm gonna kill that Cyclops bastard. The Chunin backed away, more terrified than they'd been in a long time. Gate duty tended to dull the senses, and Anko tended to wreak havoc on them. Team 7 was prepared for anything that might be thrown at them, but it seemed that the trio they faced was the only challenge. They made short work of the sprint to the forest. Hinata was pretty tired by the time they made it to the tower, and Sasuke was breathing hard, though he did a good job of hiding it. They walked through the designated doors, still no guard. Anything was possible when it came to Kakashi-sensei's tricks. The silver-haired Jonin greeted them, as did their own Jonin-sensei. Most surprisingly though, was the Hokage, dressed in the full garb that comes with the position. Sarutobi looked on at the 3 genin of Team 7. His chest swelled with pride. Never had the Leaf had a team that embodied the will of fire more. All 3 would lay their lives on the line for the others, without a first thought, let alone a second. His pipe was inconspicuously absent. He was ditching the loving grandfather routine for the moment. Right now he was the 3rd Hokage, god of shinobi, and the genin could feel the power radiating off of him. Naruto wanted to let his own power leak, never one to be outdone, but Sasuke laid a hand on his shoulder. The corners of his lips were upturned as he shook his head. Team 7, I believe congratulations are in order. We expected you to pass, but not quite so easily. I think it would be accurate to say you surprised even the sensei who trained you. The Hokage said. Speak for the other 2, sensei. I'm not surprised one bit. A deep voice said from the corner of the room. Yamato, Hinata, and Sasuke looked confused. Kakashi and the Hokage were unreadable. Naruto had his 1000-watt smile on his face. Pervy sage, I thought I sensed you. Naruto shouted, throwing a kunai where the voice had come. Jiraiya materialized, seemingly out of thin air, as his camouflage jutsu was released. He caught the kunai between 2 fingers casually, trying to look cool in front of the other Jonin. Yeah right, Gaki. You're not good enough to sense me ye. A cloud of green smoke released from the kunai, and Jiraiya's face turned a similar shade when he smelled it. Ha ha ha. Ink release. Stink bomb is a success. Naruto shouted. Gon was the intense leader that had steered the prodigious team through the forest. He seemed much more childlike now that Jiraiya was in the room, and the mission was over. The way a 12-year-old was supposed to be. You insolent little brat. Jiraiya yelled when he, kind of, regained his composure. I'm gonna make you do push-ups with bunta on your back. Come here. Sannin chased after Genin, running circles around the other ninja in the room. Ahem. The Hokage cleared his throat after they made a few laps. Jiraiya recognized the look on his face, and came to a stop. Naruto followed suit. As I was saying, Team 7, you have come a remarkably long way, not just overall, but in the month since you became a team. Your individual skills are well above the standard for newly graduated students, and more impressively, your teamwork is top-notch. I wanted to come to personally congratulate you on being the fastest team to ever be given a C rank. You broke the record set by my own team by 2.5 months. Naruto and Sasuke puffed their chest out, almost imperceptibly, while Hinata's chin raised a fraction of an inch. Let me make this clear though. C ranks will never be normal for your team. The Hokage said, his voice gaining an edge. You have the last Uchiha, a member of the main branch Hyuga, and perhaps the last Uzumaki, who also happens to be a Jinchuriki. Any enemy combatants you come across will likely try to capture at least one of you. You must always be on edge when you're outside the village. You three have the potential to be even stronger than my genin team turned out to be. I'd hate to see it wasted because one of you got careless. He emphasized his message by releasing just a little bit more of his chakra. He was inwardly pleased to see none of them react outwardly. Hinata was nearly sweating when the Hokage let his presence be known, but it seemed he was holding back comparatively. It was slightly easier to withstand than when Naruto drew the Kyuubi's chakra and formed a single tail. Kakashi will be handpicking a mission that suits your team in order to ease you into missions outside the village. Until then, you'll have the week off of missions to prepare. The Hokage said. He disappeared in a body flicker that was so fast, it seemed that he just blinked out of existence. Jiraiya rolled his eyes at his sensei showing off in front of Genin. Alright, kiddo, you want to get some training in? I'm only here for about a week. He asked Naruto. Naruto nodded vigorously, then looked at his team. Can you help train us all? If that's okay with Yamato-sensei, of course? Yamato only nodded, though a smile graced his face. Jiraiya made a mock-thinking pose, and hummed thoughtfully. I suppose that's all right if they're fine with it. I haven't gotten to beat up on Genin in a long time, so it should be fun. Team 7's sweat dropped. Their sensei was strong, but he wasn't Sannin level. Training with Jiraiya would probably end up being miserable for them. Chapter 14. First C-rank mission. Naruto landed from his leap, and rolled with his momentum, barely dodging the senbon that were chasing him at high speeds. He transferred the roll into a sprint, ducking behind a tree to use as a shield. His chest heaved as he tried to calm himself. He peeked out over his left shoulder, trying to get an eye on the enemy, but he didn't see the towering man anywhere. Still too slow, Gaki. Jiraiya said. Naruto whipped around in surprise, his body reacting on instinct, trying to form a shadow clone before his brain could even process what was going on. Before he could even begin to mold the chakra, the Sannin delivered a heavy-handed blow to Naruto's chest, sending him flying back 10 feet, and skidding another 20. The blonde came to a halt near where his teammates were currently licking their own wounds. 3-on-1, Sasuke grumbled. 3-on-1, and we're not even close to beating him. His displeasure was evident in his scowl. And you'll never be able to either. The great gallant Toad Sage is unbeatable. Jiraiya's posturing was interrupted by Kakashi. Whoa, you beat 3 Genin? Congratulations Jiraiya-sama, you just keep getting more and more powerful. Kakashi's tone and face were completely serious, which Team 7 had come to figure was his way of being sarcastic. Jiraiya's face deadpanned. They're a bit stronger than most Genin, don't you think? A simple wave of the hand was all he received. Kakashi wasn't one to go handing out needless compliments. From his place in the dirt, Naruto wheezed one final time as he caught his breath. You broke my ribs, you stupid pervert. Good, maybe next time you'll learn to get out of the way. Jiraiya said. The smug smirk on his face pushed Naruto over the edge. You Sanuva, he yelled, springing to his feet to begin his charge at Jiraiya anew. Sasuke tried to hook his arm through Naruto's to stop him, but it was Hinata's hand on his shoulder that ultimately stopped him. She shook her head at him when he questioned her with a look. He turned to Sasuke, who only offered a head tilt and pursed lips, as if to say, there's nothing you can do alone, if we couldn't beat him together. Naruto tilted his head to the two of them, indicating that he still had an ace up his sleeve that might even the odds a little bit. Both of his teammates shook their heads firmly. The destruction that would cause wasn't worth it for a spar or a verbal jab. He sighed, relenting that they were, at the very least, a little bit right. Kakashi smiled underneath his mask. A true smile that had been showing itself more and more these days, not that anybody could tell. Jiraiya, on the other hand, snorted lightly at the three. They were showing better teamwork and communication at that age than he, Tsunade, and Orochimaru had even into their teens. They were impressive, and that was an understatement. "Alright you three," Jiraiya said. "Get a mental room or something, I hate it when you guys leave me out of the conversation." It was a bit grumbly for a ninja of such legendary renown. He worked in spying and information though, and he didn't like being kept out of the loop. It gave him a bad feeling in his gut, whether it was deserved or not. "Your teamwork is strong, but you too." Jiraiya pointed to the boys, "Need to work on including Hinata more. It's not 3 versus 2 and a minor support." He turned to Hinata, pointing at her. She shied away ever so slightly. "And you, young lady, need to be more assertive. You don't have as much raw power as the knuckleheads, but that's not the end-all be-all. You're more precise than they are. They're gonna get most of the focus in a battle, so use that opportunity to land your own attacks, don't wait for them to call you in every time." She nodded. In truth, Naruto and Sasuke almost always had a perfect opening for her when they signaled her, but she didn't do much besides what they said, and some minor weapon support. It was nitpicking a little bit, but they were already overly developed for genin. "I believe this concludes your week in the village?" Kakashi asked Jiraiya. He continued after receiving a nod. "Good timing then. I have your C-rank mission picked out, Team 7. All 3 genin perked up. They had been training with Jiraiya until their bones creaked and their muscles groaned every day for the last week, and they were excited to finally see some action. "Report to the Hokage's office tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. sharp. Yamato-sensei will meet you there," Kakashi said. They nodded. "Rest up, your first C rank is a big deal." Dismissed. They all slouched from the straightened position they had unknowingly snapped into. Naruto went to say goodbye to his surrogate father, but he was nowhere to be found. Naruto rolled his eyes exaggeratedly. He was familiar with the games of hide and seek that Jiraiya liked to use as training, he just didn't think he'd be playing it right after getting his ass kicked. "I'll meet up with you guys after I say bye to Pervy Sage," he said. "Give him our thanks for the training," Hinata said politely. Will do, see you guys at the restaurant?" They nodded. Naruto used a shunshin to leave the immediate area so that he could focus. Jiraiya would have his chakra suppressed and resonating with the surrounding environment, so sensing him would be difficult. Sending out clones to try and find him would be basically worthless, as his camouflage jutsu was above what Naruto could currently pick out. He decided that just this one day, he would cheat at their little game. It was only fair payback after that last punch Jiraiya had dished out. He made his trademark hand seal, chakra molding so quickly and precisely that it was almost easier than walking at this point. 30 clones appeared, spread out through the forest. Every single one of them sported an ear-to-ear grin on their face. 30 Narutos at once called out, "Sexy jutsu, transform." Standing in the forest were 30 blonde women, all looking to be about 20 years old. The only thing covering them was artificial smoke from the jutsu. They all began to walk in different directions, swinging their hips as they went, calling out, "Jiraiya-sama, where are you?" After 3 minutes, Naruto received a memory from the clone who had drawn him out, and quickly body flickered there once he had his bearings. Jiraiya was laying on the ground, blood gushing out of his nose, and eyes completely unfocused. Naruto grinned again. It was the perfect opportunity. 3 smooth hand signs later, he was molding his chakra into a large water bullet to fire at Jiraiya. Just as he let the jutsu go, Jiraiya suddenly flickered out of the way. "Haha, still too slow, Naruto," Jiraiya said. Jiraiya received a smack in the head a moment later, and the Naruto that had tried the water gunshot disappeared into a poof of smoke. "Guess I'm getting faster," the blonde teased. Jiraiya grumbled and rubbed the back of his head. "TCH, I knew you were there, kid. I just wanted you to get a shot in after that ass beating I gave you in front of your little girlfriend," he said, though he wasn't entirely telling the truth. "She's not my girlfriend," Naruto said, though his cheeks were tinged pink. "She's my teammate and a kick-ass one at that." He couldn't keep the pride out of his voice after all the ground she had made up on him and Sasuke. Okay, Relax. Jiraiya said, feeling Naruto's chakras stir. You are getting better with the clone usage though. You had me fooled on which one was actually you, though I was a bit distracted, and I still could have stopped your slap. Naruto rolled his eyes again, very familiar with Jiraiya's reaction times. So, what did you want to talk to me about anyway? You're aware of the dangers of AC rank, so I'll spare you the details on that. Are you mentally prepared to make your first kill if you must? Naruto inhaled deeply, taking his time to make sure he was certain. Yes. Jiraiya nodded. He already knew that Naruto wouldn't like it, and they'd had plenty of discussions on it before, so he didn't feel the need to reiterate how ending a life might save others. Good. Protect your team and stay sharp at all times. It was Naruto's turn to nod, his ever-lengthening hair bobbing on his horned forehead protector. I'm going to be gone for a few months, but after your mission, I'm going to have Kakashi teach you a special jutsu. You shouldn't have any trouble learning it, so he's going to make it more challenging for you. I want it learned by the Chunin exams, okay? Sir, yes sir, Naruto said, mock saluting. Jiraiya rolled his eyes. The little brat could be quite the handful, but he would never regret the day he'd taken him on the road with him. It was one of the best days of his life. Jiraiya put a firm hand on Naruto's shoulder, and looked him right in the eyes to show how serious he was. Naruto, I'm so proud of the shinobi, and more importantly man, that you're becoming, and I know your parents would be too. I know I'm no replacement for them, but I just wanted you to know. I love you. Jiraiya's voice hitched ever so slightly, and his eyes had a shine to them. Naruto looked at Jiraiya with an open mouth. Jiraiya hadn't said those words to him before. Deep down he knew it of course, but the Sannin just wasn't the type to openly say it. He was more the type to show it. He was his surrogate father, his sensei, fellow toad summoner, man that beat the crap out of him, and open super pervert. He wasn't real family, they didn't have the same blood, but he was the only family Naruto had ever truly known. Tears began to flow out of his blue eyes, streaming down his cheeks with increasing force. Naruto sniffed, trying to keep the snot from running out of his nose. He wiped the tears off his face with the back of his forearm, smearing the red lines that he had taken to crossing through his first whisker mark, much like Jiraiya did, only shorter. I love you too, you stupid old pervert. He nearly sobbed the words out. Before Jiraiya could say anything else, he was wrapped into a hug, lightning fast. It was his turn to be surprised, as Naruto had never hugged him, not like this at least. He just rested his hands on his back, content to just hold him while he cried. It only lasted a second or two, but it packed all the punch in the world. Naruto pulled back, still trying to get a handle on his emotions. Next time you're here, I'll have that jutsu mastered, and I'll use it to kick your ass. Jiraiya could only chuckle at him. Both ninja of the Leaf Village felt a strange warmth in them. One hadn't ever felt it, the other hadn't felt it in years. They locked eyes, and both used the shunshin to leave the area, not feeling the need to say anymore. 5 minutes before 7 in the morning, Yamato met his 3 genin outside of the Hokage Tower. The trio knew he'd been there for at least 30 minutes, observing the surroundings. It's just how their sensei operated. Must be the Anbu in him. Have a nice mission, sensei? Sasuke asked, Sharingan spinning. He'd picked up on the minute limp that Yamato approached with. I wasn't on a mission, Sasuke. Yamato said. You know I was on leave while you 3 trained with Jiraiya-sama. Yep, sure ya were sensei, sure ya were. Naruto said. Masked or unmasked? You know I'm not allowed to speak of my missions, Naruto. Yamato said. He had long since resigned that they were smart enough to figure out when he was on one. I believe it was Anbu. Hinata said, using her Byakugan to read her sensei's body language. Course it was, otherwise he'd be able to tell us. Sasuke said. Not if it was S rank. Naruto said. If it was S rank he would have been gone longer than a week. Whatever. Naruto turned to Yamato. How'd it go? Everybody make it home okay? Naruto, you know I can neither confirm nor deny details of a mission. His body language and eyes indicate that the mission was a success, though his limp says there was trouble. Hinata said, before deactivating her Byakugan. TCH, a rank then. Sasuke said. Easy peasy for a jonin like you, right Yamato-sensei? Naruto asked. Despite the tiny quirk of his lip, Yamato rolled his eyes. It wasn't a dramatic gesture like when Naruto did it, but it conveyed the message. No more questions, time for business. Let's report to Hokage-sama before we're late. There was a reason he always met them 5 minutes early. They were nosy and liked to ask questions they didn't need to know the answer to. He was starting to like that about them though. Inside the tower, Naruto greeted everybody he could name, and some that he couldn't, with a huge smile and a wave. Some of the ninja returned the enthusiasm, others politely greeted him in return, and a few seemed to ignore them. He chalked it up to them being busy, though deep down he knew the truth. When they got to the mission assignment room, Naruto was brutally and savagely attacked by a young boy wearing a long blue scarf. Or he would have been if the boy, missing one of his front teeth, hadn't tripped over the scarf. "Konohamaru," Naruto said, "what did I tell you about trying to attack me in the Hokage tower? That you might accidentally set me on fire?" The Hokage's grandson asked. "Exactly, or if you're really unlucky, I might have Hinata shut down your organs." His point was emphasized by Hinata using her single hand seal to activate her Byakugan. "No," the young Sarutobi yelled, rushing out of the room on his tiny legs. The three genin all laughed, and Yamato even cracked a smile. "I fear you've motivated him far better than I ever could have, Naruto-kun," the Hokage said. "It seems your run in a few weeks ago has sparked his will of fire. I can't thank you enough." The assassination attempts were getting old. The Sannin chuckled. "Ah, it's nothing. He just reminds me of myself when I was younger, yelling about how he's going to become Hokage." Naruto couldn't help but chuckle himself. "I'm not sure he'll be much of a rival though, he's only 7. Speaking of being reminded of our younger selves, I see that you've made a uniform change," Sarutobi said. Naruto blushed slightly. His new mission outfit was now ready to go after being tested extensively. It was designed after the third's old war getup. He wore standard shinobi pants and a tight long sleeve shirt, both of which were an ashy gray so dark that they were essentially black. His usual mesh body armor with green handguards resided underneath, though it was only visible at his wrists and collar line due to the bandages on his limbs. His kunai holster was still taped to his right thigh, more for show than anything, since he had seals lining his clothes that contained various weapons and items that would be needed for a mission or combat. Standard black shinobi sandals encased his feet, much more comfortable for long missions than his wooden geta. Light gleamed off of his freshly polished, oil headband that his summons had given him, the black straps used to tie it on hanging down past his hair, to his mid-back. His black Konoha forehead protector wound around his waist in place of a belt. His blonde hair flopped over the headband and down the side of his head, framing his face in bangs reminiscent of his father's. Unlike the fourth Hokage though, Naruto wore his in a short ponytail down to his upper back, ready to be used in any of the techniques his godfather had taught him. He continued to support the red paint leaking from his eye, though it was much shorter than before, continuing his ode to the Sannin. Jiraiya had called the outfit boring and unbefitting of a student of the great Toad Sage when he'd shown him. He was sure he looked badass. Cooler than Sasuke's new digs at least. A.N. Sasuke is wearing his outfit from the filler of episode 442, where he joins the police force. Grayish undershirt and pants, black vest, bandaged legs with armor over them. No police force logo though, just the Uchiha crest. The vest won't be the same as the Chunin vests, as there won't be the Uzumaki crest on the back, but it's a similar style, and no skirt thing. Search Sasuke police force in Google Images to see it. I like it a lot. It reminds me of the good old days when my joints didn't hurt so much. The Sannin said, giving him a grandfatherly smile. Anyway, I presume you're here for your mission? Team 7 straightened and nodded, though the smiles couldn't be kept off their face. Very well, here is the mission Kakashi picked for you. A simple patrol to the border of the land of hot springs and back. Standard stuff, though with the potential to run into bandits or missing nin. He handed the scroll with the details to Yamato, who took it silently. I'm expecting a successful mission from you three, since you're the ones who requested it, he said, face stern, a small amount of his tremendous chakra leaking. Don't worry yaw old geezer, we won't let you down. Naruto yelled. Naruto, have some respect for the Hokage. Yamato said. It was his duty to teach him after all. Yeah, I know. He already gave us the mission though, so it's fine. And look at him, high-souled. You can't argue that. Yamato put a hand over his face, mumbling to himself about discipline. Konoha is counting on you Team 7. I wish you luck, though I don't expect you'll need it. With that, the squad of 4 marched out of the Hokage tower. The Hokage was right, they didn't need luck, the mission was easy. And boring. Naruto knew that it wouldn't be all action and fighting missing nin or other villages. Still, he thought they would at least see someone else along the way. 7 full days spent traveling their sector of fire country, and they didn't see a single soul. No missing nin, no bandits, not even a civilian. He was pretty sure that Kakashi had picked this mission specifically because it would be boring, and he was fully plotting his revenge as they made their final approach to the village gates. The report to the Hokage was just as boring as the mission had been, though the old man was smirking the whole time. Stupid older ninja and their experience. The trio and their sensei made their way out of the Hokage tower. 2 of them were sporting grumpy looks on their faces, while the other 2 seemed pleased. It was only noon, and Yamato gave them the rest of the day off, as was required after anything higher than a D rank. Hinata was happy with how the mission went, and was content to report its success to her father. Naruto and Sasuke did not feel the same way. Which training ground? Sasuke said. 45, I want to blow off some steam. Sasuke nodded and departed for his apartment, and Naruto did the same. When their mission gear was swapped out for training gear, they both moved to meet at the training ground, and of course, arrived at the exact same time. Damn it, Naruto yelled. I thought I would beat you this time. He immediately made 10 shadow clones. Just because he would be sparring with Sasuke didn't mean that he couldn't also get some regular training in. The 2 boys vented their frustration by destroying the training ground to the best of their ability. Wind, fire, water, and lightning techniques laid waste to the grounds, shattering trees, and tearing up dirt. Most of it was more venting frustrations than sparring, as they didn't want to risk injuring each other too badly. They both took their fair share of blows though, and Naruto sported a swollen eye, while Sasuke had a black one with a cut on his cheek. The session was more stress relief than truly trying to improve, so neither was focused on winning, they just wailed on each other. It was only an hour before they were laying on their backs, huffing and puffing trying to catch their breath. There was blood spilled just about everywhere, most of it being Naruto's. At some point he insisted on putting away his own swords, and going against Sasuke's sword without a weapon. He was trying to create a wind shield, and it actually worked extremely well. The only problem was he kept coming away with cuts anyway. He couldn't direct the wind chakra strictly away from himself, and his own technique was the main cause of all his wounds. Why are you so stubborn? Sasuke asked in between breaths. What do you mean? Naruto said. You could use your clones to outpace me easily? Why do you focus on things that you can't do? They'd had this conversation before, but Sasuke still didn't understand. If Naruto concentrated all his training clones on 1 or 2 skills, he would quickly become too strong in that aspect for Sasuke to be able to keep up with him. Sasuke was a little bitter knowing that Naruto could surpass him if he wanted to. I need to be good at everything. How can I protect my family otherwise? Naruto sat up and took a few deep breaths to finally get his lungs under control. I have to be good at everything. What good are wind jutsu if Hinata is hurt? What good is kenjutsu if I'm stuck in a genjutsu? I have the chance to try and become good at everything and be useful in every situation. I couldn't take it if I didn't learn something just because it was hard, and a shinobi of the leaf got hurt because of it. Sasuke looked at him, his Sharingan having lit up at some point while Naruto was talking. He eyed his best friend carefully. Is it not better to be the best at one thing than to be mediocre at everything? He had long since given up on trying to perfect everything, choosing to focus on the things he was good at. It was the only way he could keep up or pass Naruto. He would never be as good at fuinjutsu or wind techniques, at least not better than Naruto. If he focused on fire and lightning, and maybe kenjutsu and genjutsu, he could go head to head with him. A small grin found its way into the corner of Naruto's lips. I don't know, that cut on your cheek says I'm just a little more than mediocre with the sword. Maybe I'll just have to be the best at everything? The grin was splitting his face by the end of the sentence. In your dreams, loser. There's some things you'll just never be better at than me, Sasuke said. There was a light arrogance to his words. Yeah, red eyes make Sasuke go brr. I get it. If my newest genjutsu theory pans out though, your eyes might not be able to help you. Sasuke quirked an eyebrow at that. Naruto knew the Sharingan better than most in the village, due to his close proximity to Sasuke and Kakashi. The Sharingan had been around for hundreds if not thousands of years though, and there was no known genjutsu technique that could defeat a fully matured one. Not for a skilled user of the eye at least. It's still a long way away right now. I have a bunch of clones working on that and medical ninjutsu though. I only have a couple training in my more traditional shinobi arts, unless something grabs my attention. I know. Just imagine how strong you could be in a month, if you focused all your clones on training a few skills that you're already good at. You could be a stronger wind or water user than any shinobi in Konoha. Or you could be the best seal master in the village, maybe even the world. Why do you waste your time on things you have no affinity for? Sasuke flung a rock that he picked up off the ground. It struck a tree and buried itself through the bark. He was frustrated by Naruto's unwillingness to tap into his power. If he had that much chakra to use shadow clones, he would already be strong enough to take on Kakashi if he specialized. I told you, I don't care about becoming a Jonin at 13 or anything like that. I train to get strong enough to protect the ones I love and the village I love. That includes you, you bastard. What if you take a blade to the gut? Who's gonna save you? TCH. Like I'd ever let somebody stab me. Naruto rolled his eyes. He knew that Sasuke's pride wasn't true hubris, but for some reason the Uchiha thought that the posturing made the Uchiha look stronger or something. What are you two airheads arguing about now? A light voice said, gaining their attention. A couple of cuties like you shouldn't be fighting all the time. We fight because that's what brothers do, Ino. Naruto said. Sasuke crossed his arms and turned his head at brothers, unwilling to let the rest of the village see what he himself believed. What are you two doing here? Sakura and I wanted to get some extra training in, and we thought this area would be more private since it's so close to the forest. When we saw you though, we thought we'd come see if you wanted to join. We just got done training, actually. Naruto turned to Sasuke, and their eyes locked. I think we still got enough left in the tank to kick your sorry asses though. He teased. Oh yeah, Blondie? Yeah, Piggy. Oh, can't come up with anything good so you have to steal from Sakura? If it ain't broke don't fix it. Well then your face really needs fixing. Ino teased. Oh that's cold, Ino-chan. Is it Naruto-kun? Alright you two, Sakura said. Get a room if you want to continue. If we're gonna train, we should train. You can flirt on your own time. Both Naruto and Ino's faces tinged pink, and they suddenly found the dirt very interesting. Before things had a chance to become more uncomfortable, Sakura saved them. Well, we were going to do some sparring, but it looks like you guys already did that. Any other training you might want to do? Sakura paled when she saw the grin on Naruto's face. Chapter 15. A hostage situation. Naruto, Hinata, and Choji were walking down the street, killing time after their lunch at Ichiraku. As they meandered carelessly down the dirt roads of Konoha, Naruto felt a familiar chakra rush that accompanied a nearby shunshin. The chakra's signature was so familiar to him that he didn't even bother turning to look. What's up, Sasuke? Sasuke rolled his eyes. We have a mission. Another C rank? Naruto asked. Sasuke grinned, not an unusual sight these days, at least when he was around his team. He tossed a scroll to Hinata and Naruto each. They both unrolled the scrolls, eyes flitting across the mission details. A B rank? This doesn't seem like something Kakashi or Yamato would pick. Hinata said. Sasuke smirked. I agree. I believe it came straight from Hokage-sama. The old man specifically requested us? Seems like the most likely explanation anyway. Woohoo. Naruto said, gotta go Choji, we got a mission to prepare for. Wait a minute, Choji said. A B rank? We haven't even been on our first C rank yet. Naruto grinned at him. Yep. It's not a big deal or anything. It is probably a record though. Anyway, gotta go. See y'all later Choji. The shunshin left only a breeze. Choji turned back to Hinata, only to find her gone too. He just chuckled and went back to munching greedily on his potato chips. Team 7, are we ready? Yamato said. It was 5 minutes before 8 p.m. when he arrived at the southern gate. Right on time, just like always. Yes we are, sensei. Hinata responded. The boys nodded beside her in agreement. Alright, the target was last spotted somewhere between here and the border with the Land of Rain. You know the mission parameters, so let's get moving. Without another word, they fell into their standard traveling formation when they were outside village walls. Hinata was in the middle of a triangle that featured Yamato in the front, using his experience as a Jonin to lead them. Naruto was behind Hinata to the right, covering her back and flank. Sasuke was on the other side doing the same. They took to tree hopping to start. They weren't on an escort mission, so they didn't need to travel at a civilian pace. They didn't want to wear themselves out either, so despite the urgency of the mission, they weren't pushing the pace all that fast either. It took them half a day to reach the area where their target was last spotted. Naruto and Hinata were working overtime to try and find her. They weren't on a strict timetable, but you never knew what bandits would do with a kidnapped hostage. It was Naruto who sensed them before Hinata could spot them. They found their camp a mile south of a lake. Tents were spread out in a clearing. Campfires were lit sporadically between the tents, with bandits seated around them causing a ruckus. Naruto could smell the booze from his location hundreds of yards away, up in a tall oak tree. Team 7 was staying outside an average ninja's sensing range just in case there were any rogues in the group. They had to give Hinata time to properly map out and report the area, as well as locate the hostage and hostiles. Sasuke chose to join Naruto, giving Hinata some room to focus on her task. "You know what's going to happen," he said. It wasn't a question. "I know. Can you do it?" Naruto gazed in the general direction of the bandits while he thought for a moment, taking the chance to make sure he was absolutely sure. "Yes. How can I be Hokage if I'm not willing to take an enemy life for the sake of the village? How could I ever order anybody else to do it if I can't stomach it myself?" Sasuke saw the determination in Naruto's eyes, and felt a tinge of jealousy. "I'm not sure I can stomach it," he said, exhaling a puff of air out of his chest. "I don't want to turn into Itachi. I don't want to do anything that makes me feel like him." Naruto didn't miss a beat in response. "You're nothing like him. Like I said, this is for the village and all those in it that we love. We're doing it to protect them. That's the complete opposite of Itachi as far as I'm concerned." Sasuke steeled his resolve, the blonde's words touching all the right notes to calm down and inspire him. The two genin sat in silence, checking equipment for the fourth and fifth time, and mentally running through their jutsu, until their captain called them over. "The hostage appears to be unharmed. Hinata has located her in the center of the camp in a tent. She's alone at the moment, so we're moving in quickly before that can change." Yamato pointed at Sasuke. "You'll be with me. Our job is to distract and combat the bandits. We need to keep the damage away from the center of the camp. Naruto, you'll be with Hinata rescuing the hostage. She will be scared, do your best to keep her quiet and cooperative." There was a momentary pause as they all thought about their part in the mission, before Yamato kicked them into action. "Alright, move out." Naruto followed Hinata, who silently led them through the forest to the back end of the clearing. They crouched down together behind a tall bush, and waited for Yamato and Sasuke's distraction to take hold. And take hold did it ever. Out of the dimming light came a massive fireball, at least to a civilian. In reality, Sasuke was capable of creating a much larger jutsu, but chose to keep it small to minimize the risk. Besides, it wasn't the fireball that was the distraction, it was what it was aimed for. The human-sized ball of flame collided with a cart, setting it ablaze. Seconds later, there was a small explosion, and the flames burned hotter and wider. He had lit the booze cart aflame, and every bandit in the camp was now pissed off and looking for the jutsu caster. Sasuke, for his part, made it very simple for them to find him. He stood at the edge of the clearing, hand planted on his hip and a smug grin on his face. As the bandits began to roar in outrage, the nearest ones charged at him. The 8 closest found themselves tripped up by unseen roots that quickly expanded and tangled amongst themselves. In seconds, they were all trapped in a makeshift prison of gnarled tree roots. The wood was several inches thick and compressing on them. They wouldn't be escaping. The distraction was more than enough for the other 2 members of the team to begin making their way through the campground, weaving around tents and doing their best to avoid any of the bandits. Naruto led, with Hinata directing from behind him. They were 2 tents away when they hit their first resistance. Literally. A man with a large axe and leather straps crossing his chest noticed them and charged from their left. As the brute raised his axe high above his right shoulder, Naruto smoothly slipped inside his range and dropped him with a single jab to the face. He felt the man's nose crunch under his knuckles, and felt more than saw the blood spray from it. To Naruto it was easier than beating up on Konohamaru. The man seemed to move in slow motion. He briefly wondered if this is how Sasuke saw things when he activated his bloodline. His attention was quickly drawn back to the battlefield when he heard Hinata moving to their right, cutting off Naruto's would-be second attacker. 3 lightning-quick strikes dropped him, but before Naruto could compliment her on a job well done, he caught movement out of the corner of his eye. There were 5 of them moving towards the tent with the hostage, each holding a different weapon. One man even held a light torch. There was no hesitation, no worry. Just a job to be done, and that's all Naruto focused on as his hands raced through newly familiarized hand signs: tiger, rat, horse, snake, dragon. As he clapped his hands together, he felt his chakra well up in his gut. He forced it up towards his mouth, compressing it as much as possible as he did. Water release. Water severing wave. The water stream shot out of his mouth like a fire hose, and he swept his head to catch all of the attackers. The B-rank jutsu was intended to slice, but the genin was yet to perfect it. He was also backing off the power quite a bit, knowing the opposition. The result was still much more than Naruto had anticipated. While it didn't cut them in half like the jutsu intended, it struck all 5 in the chest and immediately dropped them to the ground and swept them away. None of them moved when the water relented and their bodies sprawled to a stop. He could see several of them had completely caved in chests. The blonde froze, his face feeling hot, and his head light. Luckily, Hinata had seen the whole thing. She grabbed him by the hand and pulled him towards the tent with their hostage. Naruto was brought back to reality by her, and he quickly snapped out of it. They reached the tent in seconds, the rest of the bandits either occupied by Yamato and Sasuke, or afraid of what the blonde had just done. Hinata entered while Naruto stood watch. It was decided that a friendly female face would be better for a young teen girl to see, much as Naruto wanted to debate that he was the friendliest looking. 10 seconds went by, then 30, then a full minute. Naruto fired off a massive gust of wind, sending one of the few bandits brave enough to charge flying back through the air. He was about to check on the 2 when Hinata called his name. He quickly ducked into the tent opening, ready to fight. Hinata and the hostage were the only 2 in the tent though. Hinata looked fine, but the brown-haired girl looked to be in shock. Ropes showing signs of Hinata's Juken strikes lay at her feet. Her pants were torn in a way that was definitely intentional. When Naruto saw this, he felt angry. Truly angry for the first time in, well, he wasn't sure he could remember a time when he had been that angry before. He felt the Kyuubi's chakras stirring in him, asking him to harness its chakra, calling to him to let it out. It wanted him to go on a rampage and destroy whoever had done it. He needed to calm down and think, but the Biju's chakra bubbling in his gut was hard to fight. It was a gentle touch from Hinata, and his training that finally did it. The breathing training that the old Koot pervy sage made him run through every morning. He took several breaths and focused on what he could that wouldn't set him off. His team was okay as far as he knew, the mission was going well. The hostage didn't appear to be overtly injured in any way. He just had to keep moving one step at a time. He squatted down to look at the seated girl's eyes, and put on a gentle smile. "I'm Naruto, what's your name?" There was no response, the girl just kept staring into the ground, a light tremble running through her body. Naruto kept the gentle smile and slowly moved a hand to her back. She flinched, but he just smiled bigger to reassure her, and his hand made contact. The girl shook harder, but Naruto powered through, intent on helping. He began to channel chakra through her, slowly at first, but quickly increasing the amount. In his many hours of medical ninjutsu practice that he had put in, he had only succeeded at one thing so far: calming people down. Hinata said it was because he had the warmest chakra she'd ever seen. Sasuke said it was because even a baby wouldn't think he was threatening, which he meant as a diss but Naruto took as a compliment. As he let his chakra flow smoothly through the girl, he thought about his happiest memories. Jiraiya teaching him his first jutsu. The toads accepting him, becoming a part of Team 7. A big bowl of ramen at Ichiraku's. Slowly the girl relaxed, and after a moment longer, she looked up into his eyes. "What's your name?" Naruto asked again. "Nyoko," she said so quietly that if Naruto hadn't preemptively channeled chakra to enhance his hearing, he never would have heard. He smiled bright at her, continuing to let the chakra flow into her. Wow, that's a beautiful name. I'm Naruto, that's Hinata. We're here to save you. Our teammates are taking care of business outside, but we need to get you out of here. Can you stand? Nyoko nodded. He smiled big again, removing his hand from her back and standing up straight. He reached to grab her hand, and effortlessly lifted her to her feet. Alright, it could get dicey out there, so Hinata's gonna carry you while I keep a lookout, that okay? She shook her head hastily, much to Naruto's confusion. Well, I can't let you walk, it's too dangerous. Why don't you carry her? Hinata chimed in, knowing what she would want if she were in the team's shoes. Naruto tilted his head in question. He was about to ask why she'd want him, but he never got to it. Nyoko nodded her head at the suggestion, and moved closer to him. He shrugged, and made a single hand sign. 5 more Narutos came into existence, and the original picked her up bridal style. As they ducked their way out of the tent, he felt a chakra spike that had the telltale tingle of lightning nature. A nice reassurance that Sasuke was still functioning, even if the enemy wasn't all that dangerous in the first place. The newly minted battleground was a disaster zone. A section of it was soaked from Naruto's water jutsu. The rest was littered with fires, freshly grown wood, blackened grass, and much to Naruto's queasiness, the bodies of a majority of the bandits. To his right, Sasuke was squatted down checking for a pulse on what appeared to be the last of the men responsible for the kidnapping. Naruto, his clones, and Hinata made their way to join the rest of their team. Hostage has been safely acquired, sensei. Naruto chirped. Good work you two. Yamato said, are you alright Nyoko-sama? Sama? Naruto and Hinata simultaneously questioned silently. There was a soft mumble into Naruto's shoulder, too quiet for the rest to hear, so he translated. She's a bit shaken up but I don't think she's suffered any permanent physical damage. He said, tone a bit more uptight and serious than normal. Very well, we should get moving then. That battle could attract a lot of unwanted attention. The 3 genin bobbed their heads at their sensei, who turned to leave. Before his team followed, Naruto and Sasuke both turned to look at each other, checking in. 2 slight imperceptible nods were given, before Sasuke checked on Hinata. When they were all satisfied that everyone was okay for the time being, they took off after their sensei. They traveled at a much slower pace, given that Naruto was carrying a civilian girl. Their formation had also shifted, without a single order given, to allow for Naruto to be in Hinata's usual spot, though there were several clones flanking the Byakugan user to accommodate the shift. Upon returning to the village hours later, an Anbu squad immediately ushered them straight to the Hokage's office. Within the confines of the seat of power for Konoha, was the Hokage, along with a pompous man dressed in fancy silk clothing. The jewelry dripped off of him as if he was a fountain made of gold. The samurai next to him, as well as the jewelry, indicated that he was quite wealthy. Despite this, the thin man had a humble air about him. Team 7, this is Hiroshi Fukushima, the treasurer of the Land of Fire, and one of the closest advisors to the daimyo, as well as being his brother. I believe that you have just rescued his daughter. Naruto's jaw dropped open, eyes wide in shock. Nyoko was the niece of the fire daimyo? Hinata and Sasuke's reaction was much more downplayed, though a reaction at all from them, while in front of the Hokage no less, was telling enough. Naruto shot Yamato a quick glare for not giving them the full breadth of the mission. Yeah, she's in the hospital getting treated. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly after he recovered from his surprise. I'm almost positive she's fine though. We had Hinata look her over. He tended to babble on when he was nervous, which wasn't all that often. She's one of the best and most talented Hyuga, he added quickly, so I trust her. I mean I'd trust her eyes. Well, I trust her too, but I also trust her eyes. He glanced sideways at the Hokage, who was stifling a chuckle but openly smiling. I'm gonna stop talking now. He made a zipper motion over his lips, and shrunk into himself to try and look smaller. Yamato came to his rescue. I think, what Naruto is trying to say, is that the mission was a success, Hiroshi-sama. Nyoko-sama was rescued with minimal injuries quickly, and the group responsible was eradicated. She's quite shaken up, but you should be able to go see her. Thank you so much, Team 7 was it? I am forever in your debt. He bowed to them, much deeper than they ever would have expected from somebody of his importance, and left the room in a rush. Naruto turned to watch him leave, then whipped back to the Hokage. Gigi, what the fuck? It was Hinata and Sasuke's turn to be outraged, while Yamato became more familiar with the lines on both of his palms. Naruto-kun, Hinata said, you have to be more respectful to the Hokage. She sounded unsure of herself, despite the confidence that the words showed. All of the reactions were drowned out by Hiruzen's roaring laughter. Is there a problem, Naruto? He asked after calming himself. Naruto deadpanned at him. Why were we assigned such an important mission? You just had Genin sent to rescue the niece of the daimyo. What if it had gone wrong? What if she had been injured or killed? Sarutobi seemed to think about this for a few seconds before he responded. Well, Naruto. For starters, you and your team are extremely skilled, and have yet to give me a reason to not believe in you. Secondly, between yourself and Hinata, you are an excellent sensory team, and she needed to be found promptly. The Hokage then leaned in and whispered so that only he could hear, just between you and me though, you might want to work on those sensory skills of yours. There was an Enbu team tracking you the whole time as backup just in case. Naruto's cheeks reddened at that, embarrassed that he hadn't been able to pick up on their tale. Lastly, you want to be Hokage, right? Naruto nodded. Do you know what it takes to become the Hokage? Naruto puffed his chest out and answered resolutely. You have to be the strongest ninja in the village. You have to be able to make hard decisions about the village, and risk the lives of your fellow shinobi for the greater good, and you have to be willing to risk your own life to protect Konoha, and carry on the will of fire. Hiruzen nodded. Impressive answer, as expected Naruto. Wrong though, I'm sorry to say. He held up a hand before Naruto's incredulous look could turn to outraged words. Let me finish. You are correct, that is what it takes Tobahokage. What it takes to become Hokage is a different story altogether. Sarutobi began slowly pacing past the photos on the wall of his predecessors and successor. To become Hokage, you must not only qualify for the job's duties, but you must be in a position where people wish for you to have the job. His pacing came to a halt in front of the portrait of the Yondaime. Do you know who selects the Hokage? The question was directed at Naruto, but Sasuke answered for him. The elders and leaders of the village, but the Jonin must approve too. And, the Hokage drawled, the daimyo also must approve the choice. Hinata said. Very good, Hinata. He turned back to Naruto. You must have the favor of the daimyo in his court, or at the very least, more favor than anybody else. Hiroshi is the daimyo's favorite advisor, being his only sibling. Opportunities to help people with that much power do not come often. I thought it prudent to get your foot in the door early. He addressed the rest of the team. Of course, it never hurts to strengthen the name of the Hyuga and Uchiha, two of our most prominent clans. Sasuke straightened his posture minutely, while Hinata bowed deeply. You three are dismissed. I expect a full report by the end of the day tomorrow. They turned to exit, leaving their sensei behind. Though I should say, of all my available ninja in the village, Team 7 was my first choice to succeed at the mission, regardless of politics. The grins on the three genin could be seen for hours to come, but none matched the one residing on their sensei's face. A few days later, the Rookie 9 were gathered at Choji's favorite barbecue restaurant in celebration. Team 10 would be leaving for their first C rank the next day, much to Shikamaru's lamentation. Apparently Ino had straight up demanded it after hearing of Team 7 getting a B rank. The first rookie team to do so since the Sannin apparently. Naruto was doing his best not be graceful about it, but the smirk on his face was better suited on an Uchiha than himself. It did seem to help Hinata's confidence along even more though, which was always a positive. He was just about to dig onto a juicy cut of meat when he was interrupted by a light and smooth voice. Excuse me, Team 7? Nyoko? Naruto said. You're out of the hospital? That's great. Hinata also voiced her happiness, though in a much more respectful manner. Sasuke almost smiled at her, which was pretty good for him. Sakura punched Kiba in the side of the head to keep the drool from spilling out of his open jaw. I was just released. The Hokage told me I might be able to find you here. Did you want to join us? We have room for one more. He slid over, patting the spot on the booth right next to him. She blushed slightly but shook her head, her brown hair looking much better than it had a few days ago as she did so. I just came to thank you, Naruto-kun. Hinata and Ino raised an eyebrow at this, as did Sakura, albeit for different reasons. And you too, Hinata and Sasuke. I don't think I'd be here without you. She recovered quickly. Please accept my most sincere gratitude and this gift. Nyoko bowed as deep as she could formally, and then extended a gift-wrapped box out to Naruto. The blonde took it awkwardly, and stumbled around opening it. It's an invitation? He said, unsure of himself. To come visit the daimyo's court and have dinner. She blushed again. It's for all three of you of course, and your sensei. Naruto didn't really like the sound of having dinner with a bunch of stuffy old rich people, but before he could turn her down, Sasuke answered for him. We are most grateful for the offer, Nyoko-sama, and of course we accept, although it might be hard to find a day with our busy schedules. We mean no offense of course. It is an open invitation, you may come whenever you please, just be sure to send word ahead so that we might prepare for you. She was speaking to all three of them, but she couldn't take her eyes off of Naruto's. She bowed once more, before turning on her heel and quickly evacuating the area. The table was silent for a few seconds, before Kiba interrupted. What a babe, how'd you manage to land that, Naruto? He earned himself another punch to the head, this time from Ino, for his comment. I didn't lend anyone, Kiba. He turned to Sasuke, and why did you accept? I don't want to go to a fancy dinner with people I don't know. What the hell am I even supposed to wear to that? Sasuke smirked at him. You heard what the Hokage said the other day, you need to get your foot in the door with the daimyo, and accepting the invite does just that. Plus she looked like she wanted to AHJHFE. Kiba was interrupted by Sakura shoving a napkin down his throat to shut him up. Ino picked up the slack for the Inuzuka though. I hate to agree with Dogboy, but he's right, Naruto. She was eyeing you like Choji eyes the juiciest piece of meat on the grill. Naruto let out an exasperated sigh. Why though, why can't she just eye Sasuke like everybody else? Hinata inwardly took offense to this. She's probably super prim and fancy too. I don't think I'd like that in a girl. Oh, you wouldn't know what you like if it smacked you over the head. Ino said. So troublesome. Shikamaru added from his place resting on his own forearms, trying to catch up on sleep. What Pineapple Head said. Naruto said, before digging into his food. Chapter 16. Trip to the capital. 1 week before the Chunin exams start. I don't understand why I have to wear this stupid kimono. Naruto tugged at the neck lining of it, complaining just quietly enough so that the guards wouldn't be able to hear. It's a dinner with the daimyo, what do you not understand? Sasuke said. Naruto sighed, exasperated at the situation. Why did Nyoko have to invite them? He'd rather relive the fight with Zabuza in an infinite genjutsu than attend a formal dinner. Naruto-kun, this is an honor for us and our clans. Please try to be respectful. Hinata admonished. At least as much as somebody of her kindness could. Naruto sighed again. He had just gotten the Uzumaki clan officially reinstated as an active clan. He couldn't afford to tarnish it in any way. Fine, but we're spending the rest of the week training in the forest away from all things fancy. He declared. His teammates and sensei could only shake their heads at him. He did have to admit though, that his kimono was pretty sweet. It was a white silk design, with red flames licking all over it. An homage to his father, not that anybody would know that's what it was. If anybody asked, it was simply a symbol for the will of fire. The red Uzumaki swirl was featured on the back and his left chest, over his heart. A servant of the court came to collect them, and the 4 members of Team 7 wound their way through the endless corridors of the Fire Country's royal palace. Somewhere along the trip, Nyoko joined them. Naruto had spent the whole month training with the Hyuga, though not in shinobi skills. He bowed the proper distance, and was perfectly respectful as they exchanged greetings. He hated every second of it. Nyoko giggled and waved her hand at him playfully. Please Naruto-kun, you don't need to be so formal with me, I don't really care for it. She said. Naruto sighed, this time thankfully. Thank goodness, I'm not sure how long I could keep that up for. She giggled again, much more cheerful and lively than the last time he'd seen her, something he found himself liking. You'll definitely want to do it for my uncle though. Whether he is a fan of it or not, I do not think he would allow a shinobi to be so casual with the daimyo, not even a cutie like yourself. Politics and such, she explained. Sasuke and Hinata rolled their eyes from behind her. Naruto paled, just now realizing he'd have to keep the act up for the whole night. His shoulders slumped in resignation, as if all the air had been let out of him. As always though, he recovered quickly, throwing on a genuine smile at the thought of such a difficult challenge. Whatever it takes, let's do this. He promptly flipped a switch to do his best impression of what he would consider a stiff royal member. His impression, while not his best, left Nyoko in stitches. "You're so funny, Naruto-kun," she said, touching his shoulder. Hinata quickly broke them apart. "You look very nice, Nyoko-sama," she said with a little more emphasis than was strictly necessary. Sasuke rolled his eyes at his teammates, something he'd been doing a lot lately. "Can we go to the dinner, please? I don't want to be late." "Of course Sasuke, let us go," Nyoko replied, turning to lead the way, but keeping Naruto close to her. The dinner was nerve-wracking for the blonde, despite the hard work that he'd put into being politically presentable. Hinata had nearly had to hold him back when the daimyo asked to see Sasuke's Sharingan, and one of his guardian ninja said that it wasn't a good idea because the eyes couldn't be trusted. Sasuke brushed it off coolly, but Naruto bothered him. The rest of the dinner went smooth enough for his taste, until their most recent mission was brought up. "So," the daimyo said, "I hear your team was credited with taking out an A- ranked missing ninja, correct?" "Oh, don't downplay their accomplishments, brother," Nyoko's father said with enthusiasm. That A-ranked nin was one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Hidden Mist. Quite a feat if the bingo book is to be believed. The daimyo seemed even more impressed by Team 7. "An accomplishment that shall bring honor to all of your clans, I'm sure." He smiled at them. "I look forward to seeing what you accomplish in your careers moving forward. As much as we'd love to take credit for it, we really shouldn't," Naruto said, mood dampened. "We were outmatched. If it hadn't been for Yamato-sensei and Asuma-sensei, we would have failed for sure. We didn't exactly make it out of there scot-free either." He shuddered thinking about what Team 10 went through before they'd arrived to back them up. Sasuke and Hinata shared his shudder next to him at the table. Their experience in Wave hadn't been a great one. Everybody made it out alive though, and that's what mattered. Well, everybody on their side at least. And Naruto is being humble. While the mission wasn't very smooth, he saved us and another genin team. Hinata said. She felt that Naruto deserved credit for what he did. The blonde, however, didn't, and kicked Hinata's foot under the table. It was too late though, and the daimyo and all his court were thoroughly impressed by Naruto. He finally put his foot down when one of the generals, a pitiful, sniveling man, suggested he receive a medal. Thankfully Yamato backed him up, saying shinobi didn't receive awards from the daimyo's army. By the time the dinner was over, Naruto was completely exhausted and ready to go to bed. Thankfully, they were each given rooms for the night so they wouldn't have to travel back to Konoha until the morning. He followed his team through the hallways to where they would be staying, slouching as he rounded the first corner out of view of the court. Halfway back he felt a presence approaching him quickly, not that he needed to sense it with the sound of slapping footsteps. Nyoko came running up next to him, shoes in her hand. "Naruto-kun, wait," she huffed, trying to keep her voice down so the rest of his team wouldn't hear. She failed, and his teammates turned to check out what was going on. "It's fine guys, go on, I can find my way back." He was not entirely excited to delay sleep anymore, but his curiosity was piqued about what Nyoko wanted. "What's up?" he said. She looked a little winded from running after him, which was surprising considering she looked to be in good shape. She brushed a brunette lock out of her face. "Well, I wanted to, ya see." She looked down, embarrassed at being tongue-tied. "Can we go for a walk?" She finally settled on. Her shoulders and face perked up in excitement as she waited for his answer. Naruto had to admit that it was kind of cute, and a walk wasn't too much work in the grand scheme of things. The fact that she didn't care for him trying to act all proper eventually sold him on the idea. "Sure, but can I change first? I think I'm gonna die if I have to wear this thing any longer," he said, gesturing to his kimono. It might have been cool, but it certainly wasn't comfortable. She smiled at him shyly, nodding her head quickly. Her hair bounced around her face. Why did he keep noticing her hair? He shook his head and took off for the nearest bathroom, removing a scroll from who knows where that contained a backup set of casual clothes. Minutes later he was back with Nyoko, sporting blue pants and a black shirt featuring the Uzumaki swirl on the front. He'd switched back to his blue shinobi sandals, and sported his oil headband that the toads had given him. Nyoko's face turned pink when she saw him. You look much better in those clothes, she said. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, ruffling his blonde locks back to where they'd been before he had attempted to comb them. Haha, thanks, he said, his face turning shade to match hers. A devious smile crept onto her face. Where I come from, she gestured to the luxurious hall they were in, that is not a compliment. Naruto opened his mouth as if he were hurt, then returned her grin. Oh, so she's more than just a pretty face? He laughed. Well, where I come from, it's embarrassing to be out of breath after running 200 feet. He nudged her with his elbow to accentuate his diss. The teasing was much more his speed versus acting all fancy and proper. He was feeling much more comfortable around her already. It was Nyoko's turn to act hurt, and she punched him on the shoulder, an easy task for her considering they were the same height. Hey, I was not out of breath from running. This dress is too tight. I can't breathe in it. She sounded exasperated to him. He couldn't understand why somebody would wear something so uncomfortable willingly. Why wear it if you can't breathe? Seems counterproductive to me, he said. I do not understand? She quirked her head in confusion. It is just what is expected, I had to do it. Naruto raised an eyebrow. If he always did what was expected of him, well, there wouldn't be a leaf village left to return to. What is wrong? She asked, noticing his facial expressions and shift in mood. Nothing. He smiled big at her, but it didn't reach his eyes. You just don't seem like the kind of person to bend to the expectations of others. There was a mixture of emotion flashing across her face, and it was conflicted feelings that he recognized well. He'd just been through it when he rescued the very girl standing in front of him. Not to mention the disaster in Wave. Sometimes doing what is expected of you is best for you and your family, even if it goes against your values that you hold in your very core. It was clear that Nyoko didn't enjoy her duties, at least some of them. Naruto knew for certain he didn't enjoy killing, especially other shinobi, but sometimes it was the only way. He hated that more than killing itself. They were clearly in two different scenarios, but he felt like he understood her a lot better now, and his respect for her grew. He could tell she was struggling to come up with the right words, so he saved her from the effort. You don't have to explain, I think I understand. He looked her in the eyes, noticing how green they were for the first time. Just, don't lose the part of you that wants to fight it. It's important to stay who we are. She seemed to understand what he was saying, and nodded firmly at him. I will not let it get to me as long as you do not either. She said, it's a promise. He smiled and winked at her, throwing in a thumbs up for good measure. They arrived at a balcony, walking out onto it. The cool air of the night tickled at the back of Naruto's neck. To his left, he felt Nyoko shiver, and moved closer to him. As they reached the railing, her arm was brushing up against his. He lightly circulated chakra, making certain not to let any of it escape his system. Given its potency, it would probably set off all sorts of alarms to any shinobi in the area. The warmth of his chakra, something he didn't often notice and generally took for granted, flowed through his body. He released a breath of air as it took the bite out of the night. Next to him, Nyoko crossed her arms, hugging herself to keep warm in her sleeveless gown. Naruto debated with himself internally. He wished he'd worn a jacket so he could just give it to her, but alas, he didn't have one with him. The kindness in his heart eventually won out. He lifted up his hand, gesturing it obscurely in her direction. May I? It took her a few seconds to understand what he was saying, and once again her cheeks tinged pink. She nodded at him though, and felt his hand lay surprisingly gently on her back. Moments later her body was flushed with warmth as he channeled chakra through her. I do not understand how you do that, but it is amazing, she said as he removed his hand. She opened up a little more now that she wasn't so cold. It's my chakra, he chuckled. It's actually a medical technique that I can't do. My chakra just happens to naturally be like that. Hinata says it's the warmest she's ever seen. He smiled at her. Well, aren't you just special? She rolled her eyes at him sarcastically, causing him to laugh. Speaking of your teammate, are you and her, you know? Naruto didn't seem to be picking up on what she was hinting at, so she decided to just spit it out. Together. Are you together? She asked shyly, immediately looking down at her still shoeless feet. He chuckled at her embarrassment, but didn't know exactly how to respond. No, we're not, he said, looking off into the night. I'm not really sure what we are. We're teammates, and that makes her family, and that complicates things. I'm not really the best with emotions in the first place. He scratched the back of his head. Yeah, he awkwardly finished, cringing a little bit at his own inability to be social. It was her turn to have a laugh at him, his awkwardness making her more comfortable about the topic. She thought about it for a few seconds, scrunching her lips together and looking up at the stars with her eyes. If you decide that you're just friends, could you let me know? She asked. It was forward, especially for a member of the royal family, but there wasn't anybody there to admonish her. Why's that? Naruto said. He wasn't sure why she would want to know what was going on between him and Hinata. Despite all the clues that she was dropping, and even his general attraction to and comfort around her, he couldn't put two and two together. Are you really going to make me say it? His face clearly told her that he didn't understand. She sighed, hunching just slightly out of her perfect posture. I am interested in you. I would like to go on a date, she said, a little bit of her training taking over, allowing her to keep an even voice. Naruto's face flushed red so fast he got a little lightheaded. He stumbled over himself. Are you? He finally realized how much of an idiot he was making himself out to be, and closed his eyes to take a deep breath. This may not be the heat of battle, but Fukasaku's lessons about keeping a calm head to avoid making mistakes still rang true. When he'd centered himself and gathered his thoughts, he spoke again. I'm not sure we're all that compatible. You're much more down to earth than I expected, but you live in a castle and you're royalty. I grew up in a single-room apartment and spent most of my time living in the woods while traveling. My whole life revolves around using chakra and you aren't even able to use it. She went to argue but he just continued, doing his best to keep his tone kind. I live in Konoha and my dream is to be the Hokage. I can't ever live anywhere else. One more deep breath to finish his thought. And most importantly, being a shinobi is dangerous, and even more so for me. There's powerful people after me for my chakra's special abilities. You would be put in danger just from being connected to me. Sometime between the chakra comment and wanting to be Hokage, Nyoko's attitude had shifted. He watched as he explained to her why they couldn't work, confused about her body language. Her hand moved to her hip, her other foot tapping the ground impatiently. Her face took on a look of, well, he wasn't sure. When he finished explaining to her all the reasons that it wouldn't work, she looked him firmly in the eyes. Is that all? His fare flopped as he flipped his head to the side with his question. Is that all the reasons? Or are there more? She said. Her tone was mysterious. That, combined with her body language, and for the first time ever, Naruto was scared of a civilian woman. I guess? He asked her. Good, she said, and suddenly she was back to normal. Naruto was at a loss for what had just happened. It took him a good 10 seconds before he realized that his mouth was hanging open. He recovered enough to face the railing and look out over the city. Internally, though, he was still entirely confused as to what was going on. A minute of increasingly comfortable silence found him on the other side of feeling awkward. The city really is beautiful from up here, Naruto said. Not bad for a civilian location. He chuckled. He'd spent a fair amount of time in civilian cities during his time out of the village with Jiraiya. Some were nice, most weren't. It is a lovely city. She glanced at him. It has never felt like home though. Not truly. What do you mean? He asked. It is fine, adequate. It is not really my favorite place though. My mother never liked it, she said. Naruto could hear the sadness in her voice even without seeing the wistful look on her face. Where is your favorite place then? She smiled, and for a moment the dark balcony was lit up. We had a cabin out in the woods. She was a big fan of nature and used to take me there whenever she wanted to get out of the city. There was a creek right out back where we used to fish. A tear had begun to roll down her cheek. What, you fished? You, the princess? Naruto asked teasingly. She giggled despite the tear. I'm not a princess, she exclaimed, and neither was my mother. Her father was a tradesman. I still do not know how she caught my father's eye. As much as she loved him, she could not stand being in the city. She looked at him confused as he laughed. I'm sorry, I just can't picture you getting your hands dirty. That's really sweet about your mom though. She sounds like she was my kind of person, Naruto said. He thought about what he was going to say next, and eventually decided on going for it. I never got to know my mom. She died protecting the village on the day that I was born. He tried not to sound too down, but some of his sadness leaked into it. I am sorry to hear that. My mother died when I was 10. She was really sick. I'm sorry. At least you have your brothers and dad. And I have my teammates and senseis. It could be a lot worse for both of us. Naruto smiled weakly. It wasn't that he didn't believe what he was saying, he wholeheartedly did. It was that some part of him wished that he didn't have to. That while the terrible hand he had been dealt could be worse, it could also be much better. It was a rare time when he truly let his emotions in and let himself feel the pain that came with such thoughts. Sometimes it was necessary to get it out of the way though, and if it would help a friend, even better. So that positive attitude is not just an act, is it? She asked. You truly believe that? Being a civilian, she wasn't trained well enough to perceive deception. She couldn't see that Naruto's smile wasn't entirely genuine. Not that Naruto was trying to deceive her, but she just couldn't detect the sadness hidden behind his cheerful disposition. It's not an act, no. Sometimes it doesn't come naturally though. I still get sad, I still have negative thoughts. The key is to stay above them, and be grateful for what you still have, rather than focusing on what you don't. He said. She nodded along, as if that made sense to her. I like it. I think I will try to incorporate that attitude myself. She held her chin up high, proudly. He smiled at her, realizing he really enjoyed her company. They ended up a little while longer, before calling it a night. Naruto escorted her most of the way back to her room. A room that was conveniently located at the top of one of the towers, despite her claims of not being a princess. Naruto snuck back into his own room, which he luckily was not sharing considering that late hour. It must have been well past midnight at this point, too late to be questioned by his team. The trip back to the Leaf was quick and clean, after he underwent an interrogation from his teammates about what Nyoko wanted. When he assured the both of them that they had just talked, they left it alone. For the time being at least. Upon returning to the village, they were called into the Hokage's office. Naruto greeted the old man as he always did, his teammates doing their more respectful iterations. Ah, Team 7, welcome back to the Leaf. How was your trip to the capital? The Hokage asked. It wasn't as boring as I thought it was gonna be, Naruto said. He seemed to be pondering his time there. It was successful, Hokage-sama, Hinata said, bowing respectfully. Surprisingly, Naruto even managed to not embarrass himself. He almost acted as a clan heir should. Sasuke added. Yamato? Their reports are, surprisingly correct. The daimyo was a gracious host, and appeared to enjoy our company. Team 7 handled the political pressure admirably, and I believe even made some allies. Yamato reported succinctly. Good, good. Hiruzen said as he puffed on the pipe that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. They sat for a few comfortable seconds before he continued. You are aware that the Chunin exams are coming up? They all nodded excitedly. So I assumed. I wanted to personally give you the invitation forms. I'm expecting you three to pass. He explained, pushing forward 3 slips of paper. They each stepped forward to grab their respective forms, before returning to place. We won't let you down, old man. Team 7 is gonna ace the exams like we were made for them. Naruto shouted. The Hokage chuckled as Yamato held his face in his hand. I expected as much. Sarutobi said, I'm looking forward to your performance. You three are dismissed. Yamato, you can hang back for the meeting. See y'all later. Naruto shouted, waving to both his sensei and leader. He rushed for the window, opened it, and leapt out before anyone could stop him. Sasuke sighed exasperatedly, and leapt after him. Hinata bowed silently, and rushed to do the same. Hokage-sama, I apologize for their behavior. They take their duties seriously on missions or training, but it seems like outside of that I just can't get them to behave. Yamato said, shaking his head. It's quite alright, Yamato. You're forgetting that Naruto gets it from Jiraiya, and that I myself could never get my student to kick his peculiar habits. The fact that you can get them to focus when necessary shows your ability as their sensei. The Hokage said. At any rate, we have the meeting for the Chunin exams now. I'm certain you know everything you're about to hear already, but I'd like for you to stay formally nominate your team anyway. At that moment, the doors opened, and in walked all the Jonin sensei for the village. Being that it was a home-hosted Chunin exams, they would likely be nominating a record number of genin for it. Exams within your own village were always considered the safest, after all. When everybody had filed in, the Hokage spoke again. Ah, I see you're all here. I assume you can figure out what this is about. Kakashi, we'll start with you. He nodded to the copy nin, who stepped forward to speak. After leaving the Hokage's office, Naruto and his team began to make their way for Ichiraku Ramen. It had become the unspoken thing to do after a meeting with the Hokage, whether it be a mission report or otherwise. He hadn't made it 15 steps when they ran into Sakura. "Naruto, Hinata, Sasuke-kun," she shouted. "How are you guys?" They chatted idly for a few minutes while they walked. They discussed missions and training and the like. Team 7 didn't bring up the Chunin exams, because they had deduced that the meeting right now was for nominations, so the pink-haired girl likely didn't even know yet. They turned the corner of a wooden fence, and Naruto immediately sighed. "Konohamaru," he called out, "what did I tell you about your camouflage? That I need to make them more realistic?" Konohamaru asked. "Yes. Can you see why a square rock with eye holes isn't realistic?" The young boy nodded profusely. "Then why did you use it?" "Well, Iruka-sensei said that sometimes hiding in plain sight could be effective," he said. Naruto sighed. The young boy had just started the academy and was taking some of the lessons a little too literally. At least he was paying attention. "Saru, just because it's a bad disguise doesn't mean it's hiding in plain sight." He rolled his eyes. Hiding in plain sight would be like walking down the street in civilian clothes, versus hiding in the shadows in your ninja gear. "Understand?" "Yes, Naruto-sensei." He saluted, bringing his hand up to his goggles. The boy then donned a devious grin. "Hey boss, are these two your girlfriends?" Naruto paled, but not because he was embarrassed. He chose to forego the answer, and instead offer a little advice. "You better run, Saru." "Huh?" the boy asked. Then he saw the look on Sakura's face. "You little brat, don't you know it's insulting to say we're both his girlfriend?" Sakura yelled. "Come over here so I can teach you a lesson." Konohamaru went pale, and turned to run. Sakura took off after him, not giving serious chase, just trying to scare the boy into a little bit of respect. Naruto chuckled. "I'll see you guys at Ichiraku. I better make sure he learns his lesson without getting hurt," Naruto said. Hinata's face was still a little red from embarrassment, but she and Sasuke both nodded. Naruto molded chakra, using his sensory ability to pinpoint them as he ran after the two. He found them on the other side of a fence, next to two other signatures. He was just hopping the fence when he felt an extremely powerful one up in a tree. He couldn't tell the size of the chakra pool because it was extremely well concealed, but the chakra that leaked was dense. On the other side of the fence, he found Konohamaru being held up by his shirt by a sand ninja. The guy had purple face paint and was wearing an all-black outfit with pointed ears on his hood. Next to him stood a blonde girl, also wearing a Suna headband. There was a good chance the signature was their Jonin-sensei then. But where was their third teammate? Was he what was strapped on the back of the boy? He could see hair poking out from the bandages. He made a cross-hand seal and concentrated hard. His clones came to life exactly where he wanted them to. "You guys here for the Chunin exams?" he asked. The sand ninja looked up. "See, put him down before we get in trouble, Kankuro," the blonde girl said. "TCH, I told you I wanted to have some fun and teach him a lesson first," the face-painted ninja, Kankuro, said. A clone of Naruto tapped him on the shoulder, causing him to spin around quickly. While he did so, the real Naruto moved in, and pressed his thumb into a pressure point on Kankuro's forearm, causing him to drop Konohamaru. His Kunoichi teammate made a move to help, but a gold chain wrapped around her from behind, stopping her. "Whoa there you two. Better calm down, wouldn't want to hurt little Saru here now, would you?" The third Hokage would be pissed if his grandson got injured, Naruto said, laying it on thick. He would apologize to Konohamaru later about the grandson comment. "Go find Sasuke and Hinata, they're at Ichiraku," he whispered to the boy. Konohamaru nodded his head and took off running. "So, what's a pretty girl like you doing following the guy with makeup around?" the clone wrapping up the blonde girl asked. She blushed a little, but didn't respond. "What about you, redhead?" a voice called from above. "You with them too?" Up in the tree, a clone of Naruto was standing on a branch above another sand ninja. This one had red hair and black circles around his eyes, a red kanji for love tattooed on his forehead. The red-headed boy glared at the clone, who got the message and destroyed itself. "Kankuro, you're an embarrassment to our village. We're leaving." The boy disappeared in a whirl of sand, reappearing between his two teammates. "Whoa, you guys didn't answer my question. Are you here for the Chunin exams? Do you have the paperwork?" Naruto asked, following protocol. The blonde girl nodded and produced the papers, showing the clone that had her locked up. The clone released her after he saw the paper, and nodded at the original. Alrighty, you guys are good to go. Please try not to attack any more citizens of the Leaf. I'd hate to have to hurt you before the exams. The one in black, Kankuro, clearly had an attitude, and only rolled his eyes. He quickly moved to follow the redhead when he began to walk away though. The blonde did as well, though she didn't look away from Naruto. The redhead stopped, turning around. His teammates gave him clearance to do so that the massive gourd on his back wouldn't hit them. He turned to the real Naruto, as all the clones had dispelled. What is your name? Naruto was a little taken aback by the intensity of his words, but didn't show it. Naruto Uzumaki. What's yours? Gaara. Of the sand. Gaara responded. He turned to leave, so Naruto did too. I'm Tamari. The blonde girl shouted before following her team. Why's it always gotta be me that finds the trouble? Naruto thought to himself as he walked towards Ichiraku. He sent a clone to report his findings to the Hokage. His meeting should be finishing up any minute. Chapter 17. The Forest of Death Part 3. Naruto's heart was pounding in his ears. His lungs burned as he sucked in oxygen. He had a horrible feeling in his gut as he leapt from tree to tree at max speed. His feet were on autopilot as he scanned the forest for his teammates. Where the hell were they? The giant snake that separated him from his team had come out of nowhere. One spike of chakra from behind him and all of a sudden he was being driven away from his two best friends. It was the snake that was the source of the feeling in his gut. They were surprised when Anko broke through the window saying she was the second proctor. They were even more surprised when she announced it would be in the Forest of Death. Surely it was going to be a breeze. After all, there were few in the village that had spent more time in Training Ground 44 than Team 7. They'd discovered a team from Rain that must have been at the gate directly next to them, and secured their second scroll easily. They could have made their way to the tower immediately, but no, he just had to run his mouth. This is a cakewalk, he'd said. We should make sure the other Leaf teams are doing okay, he'd argued. His team had followed his lead, as they often did. Look where it had brought them. The bad feeling grew as he got closer to them, his sensory abilities honing in on two chakra signatures that felt so natural to them they might have been his own. And one massive one. That chakra was foul. So foul it made him feel sick to his stomach in a whole different way. He skipped past several more massive trees and saw them. A thin grass genin, or jonin, if the chakra signature was anything to go by, was facing off with them. Sasuke's leg was bleeding, and Hinata's sleeves were all torn up and bloody. Most importantly, the grass nin looked completely unharmed. If this were a normal enemy, he would be surprised. He was confident that either one of his teammates could take out everybody in the exams with the exception of maybe Gaara. It looked like the grass nin was speaking to them, so Naruto took the time to run through a few hand signs to prepare a jutsu. He summoned a toad and explained his plan, and then got ready to make his move. Sasuke hadn't felt scared in a long time. 4 years, 6 months, and 23 days to be exact. He tried not to think about that night, even tried not to keep track of the days. He couldn't put it out of his head though. The night his family was murdered would always be the most defining moment in his life. It wasn't the same feeling as then, but it was the closest he felt he'd get. The chakra radiating from their enemy wasn't right. He'd been paralyzed by it. It was worse than Zabuza's and it really wasn't even close. He'd broken out of the daze, much to the enemy's surprise, with a kunai to the leg. He grabbed Hinata and got out of there as fast as he could, but he couldn't seem to shake whoever it was that was after them. It didn't help that Naruto had been separated from them before the fight had even started. He had given the escape all he had, but it was clear he wouldn't be able to shake their hunter. His options were to run and be hunted, or turn around and fight like hell. He and Hinata had unanimously agreed to fight without even discussing the situation. The grass Jonin, because there's no way this ninja was even a Chunin, let alone a Genin, had carelessly joined them. Now they were standing across from each other, Sasuke and Hinata on one thick branch, the tall female ninja on the other. There was an ominous cackle that began to build from her throat. The fact that her lips never moved from their grin sent a chill down his spine. He reactivated his Sharingan, he turned it off while running to conserve chakra, and he swore he heard a moan coming from her. Everything about her just felt wrong. Sasuke-kun? She let out a malicious giggle, like she couldn't hold it back. I've been waiting to meet you. I don't know who you are and I don't care. Leave us alone, freak. Sasuke responded. He did his best to keep the fear out of his voice. He wasn't sure he succeeded. Now, is that any way to treat a superior? She asked. We don't follow orders from Grass Ninja. Hinata interjected, confused by what she meant. Oh ho ho. The ninja's voice dropped significantly, taking on an even more sinister tone. But I'm not from Grass, little Hyuga princess. I'm from the leaf. Hinata gasped slightly as the ninja seemed to tear part of her face off. Just enough was removed to reveal yellow eyes like a snake, and purple skin running along their nose. In fact, I believe you've met my former teammate, Jiraiya. Orochimaru. Sasuke spat. Ah, I see my reputation precedes me. The Sannin smirked. Yeah, we learn all about the disgraceful monsters who betray the village. Now, don't be so testy with me, Sasuke-kun. You haven't even gotten to know me yet. And I never will. There was no signal, no sign from Sasuke what was going to happen, just the subtle shift in air behind him. Orochimaru ducked, dodging the slash of a sword that would have separated his head casually. Oh, are we joined by the Jinchuriki brat? I would have hoped that Jiraiya would have trained you better than that. Naruto didn't say a word, just shifted from his attack, replanted his feet, and launched himself back at the traitorous Sannin. He raised the sword over his head with two hands, attempting to deliver a powerful blow. It was simple for the Sannin to step inside his range quick as a snake. He delivered a blow to his stomach that could rupture organs. The punch was powerful enough to splash the water the clone was made from all over the Sannin. The water was sticky as syrup as it coated Orochimaru, restricting his movement. From behind him, Naruto leapt into the sky, letting loose several shuriken. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. He shouted, making the required hand sign. 6 shuriken turned into 60, raining down on Orochimaru from his spot stuck on the tree branch. Wind release, Gale Palm. Another Naruto shouted, using the jutsu to boost the shuriken to new speeds. Sasuke's fireball cut in front of Naruto's jutsu, perfectly timed. The shuriken passed through it, catching fire as they did. The wind technique hit the flaming ball full force and pushed it down into Orochimaru, amplifying the technique several-fold. The combination made a small explosion on the branch. It took a few seconds for the smoke to clear. Naruto and Sasuke landed next to each other in that time. They were back to back, down in their stances, ready for anything. They weren't under the impression that the Sannin would be put down so easily. There was a maniacal laugh to their side. Orochimaru was coming up out of a tree branch, using a jutsu to seemingly traverse the inside of it. That was impressive. You two didn't think that would do it though, did you? They looked at each other, then back at him, and shook their heads. Naruto made his cross-hand sign, summoning 4 more clones around them. More clones? Surely you don't think that will help? At that moment, Hinata struck. She came up behind him, using Naruto's jutsu as a cover for her movement. She'd used her Byakugan to track the snake Sannin the whole time. She struck 3 times, hoping to disable him. 1 Juken strike to both kidneys and 1 to his right lung. He turned around, furiously trying to backhand her. She ducked underneath his strike, and put another chakra-fueled strike into his other lung. The blow connected firmly, but she wasn't fast enough to recover. Orochimaru delivered a kick to her chest that sent her flying through the air. You insolent little brats. He turned to glare at Sasuke and Naruto, only to find them missing. He was more alert now, after being surprised twice. He quickly located Naruto to his left, another above him, and a third leaping through the air to catch his kunoichi teammate. That left Sasuke and 1 more clone. He looked to his right, and saw them on a branch higher up. They were both rearing back, chests bulging. They launched their combination jutsu at him. It was the first one they ever learned, and they worked it to perfection. Naruto's toad oil bullet raced at Orochimaru, Sasuke's flame bullet doing the same. The jutsu collided mid-air, merging with one another. This time, the Sannin was ready for it, and leapt backward onto another branch, completely dodging the jutsu and its spreading flames. He immediately felt something wrap around his legs, and looked down to see 2 gold chains snaking their way up. His chakra felt suppressed, and he was unsurprised to see the chains leading back to the Uzumaki. Your mother's chakra chains, huh? he asked, casually flicking a kunai down. It struck the blonde on the shoulder, causing him and his chains to dissipate into smoke. How dare you mention my mother? Naruto ground out. Oh? He said, staring down the three members of Team 7. But she was such a fine specimen. The Sannin grinned. Naruto's blood boiled. He felt the Kyuubi chakra stir within him. His nails broke through the skin of his palms. His blood dripped down his hand onto the tree. He'd never wanted to truly kill anyone at all before, and he was sure he'd never want to kill anyone more than right now. What do you want with us? He forced himself to try and stay calm. As interesting as you are, I don't want anything with you, little Naruto-kun. And while your little Hyuga teammate interests me too, it's not her I'm after either. No, I'm here for Sasuke-kun. I wish to give him my power. He shuddered as he let go of the last word. Naruto was furious all over again. He whispered to his teammates. Code red. 30 seconds. Then his body flickered away. Oh Sasuke-kun, it looks like Naruto is abandoning you. It's too bad he didn't kill your little Kunoichi first, then he would be just like your brother. How is Itachi by the way? Sasuke's Sharingan once again flashed red, and this time he wasn't concerned about conserving chakra. Hinata took his lead, Byakugan already primed and activated. She followed Sasuke's lead, and they both rushed after the Sannin. The two of them weaved in and out of their attacks, Sasuke using a kunai to empower his strikes, Hinata wielding her chakra. It was true that Naruto and Sasuke had unparalleled teamwork, even amongst the village that was famous for it. However, in the last months, Hinata had integrated into that as seamlessly as possible. She and Sasuke bobbed and weaved, covering for each other through each strike, counter, and block. It was the hardest they'd ever fought, the determination to buy Naruto his time pushing them to new limits. Orochimaru fended them off without fail, and while he wasn't driven back, he had zero room to make a real counter-attack. 20 more seconds. Hinata zigged and zagged to try and throw off the Sannin's rhythm, and feinted a strike before leaping back. Sasuke's shuriken came spinning at him from two different angles. The snake turned sideways, allowing them to pass by the slimmest of margins. By the time he saw the ninja wire it was too late. The metal wire wrapped around him, the momentum of the shuriken pulling it tight, causing him to buckle awkwardly against the tree. Before he could power through the wire, Sasuke sent a jutsu racing down it. Lightning release, thunderclap arrow. The lightning used the wire as a medium, and raced near instantly into Orochimaru's body. The Sannin's body convulsed while the electricity wreaked havoc on his system. Sasuke wasn't done yet though, he wanted more permanent damage. Fire release. I hope this works, he thought to himself. Fire dragon flame bullet. He inhaled as much oxygen as he could, chest expanding until his lungs and ribs screamed in protest. He exhaled all the chakra that he could, igniting it as it left his mouth. The massive bullet engulfed everything in its path, slamming into Orochimaru and lighting him and the tree on fire. 3 seconds passed, then 5. Before 10 hit, they heard the cackling once more as the flames died out. Sasuke stood there, panting. The effects of using so much chakra while keeping the Sharingan active was wearing him out. He wasn't sure how much longer he could go. Then he saw Orochimaru's face melt off. It was a disgusting and inhuman display as the facade that he had been wearing completely melted off of him. His skin underneath was red and pink, burned from Sasuke's jutsu. In the next instant, the Sannin was regurgitating, mouth opened impossibly wide. Two hands grabbed his lips from the inside, and Hinata thought she was going to be sick. The hands were followed by a head with yellow eyes, and soon the rest of Orochimaru followed. He unfolded himself, steaming and covered in a disgusting liquid, and licked his lips as he stared down Sasuke. Kukuku. He laughed. Sasuke-kun, your power is just delightful. He shuddered again as he spoke, as if he couldn't contain his joy. But I'm afraid it's nowhere near strong enough to contend with me. Let me show you true power. The Sannin flared his chakra, and it was Sasuke's turn to think he was going to be sick. The feeling coming from him was even worse than before, and even though he was more prepared for it this time, he found it extremely difficult to move. Orochimaru flew at him, fist cocked back, and something inside Sasuke screamed at him to move, and so he did. His Sharingan picked up the feint easily, and allowed him to dodge the kick that it set up. Orochimaru flowed smoothly into 2 more punches that he was able to dodge, but he wasn't able to escape the knee to his gut. A left hand hit him in the jaw, followed by an uppercut that sent him airborne onto his back. Hinata broke out of her daze and charged, throwing her most powerful Jukin attacks at her opponent. The snake man seemed to be made out of rubber as he dodged, body bending in impossible directions and angles as he did so. Another swift kick to her chest sat her down hard. The Sannin could only laugh at them. Foolish children, this isn't even a fraction of my power. I haven't even used a single ninjutsu on you yet, Orochimaru said. Sasuke winced from the pain in his head. He deactivated his Sharingan. There was no use in wasting chakra now, he was almost out. He'd have enough for one last-ditch effort, but nothing more after that. Orochimaru put his hands in a strange seal the Uchiha prodigy had never seen before. It looked like a tiger seal, but his middle fingers were crossed over his index. Allow me to share with you some of my power, he said. Before he could make a move to use a jutsu though, there was an ominous, suffocating presence that overtook them. All 3 ninjas seemed to freeze in their place as they looked off into the forest where it came from. Orochimaru smiled, having a strong idea what it was. Suddenly, out of the woods like a bullet of fire, a red figure flew at the Sannin. Orochimaru was knocked back off of his feet and the branch he was standing on. Standing in his place was a very angry-looking Naruto. He was shrouded completely in red, bubbling chakra. Behind him swayed one tail, as if it had a mind of its own. Stay away from my team, he ground out through a clenched jaw. His voice was raspier and deeper. His hair had become more ragged, his whiskers had grown darker, teeth and nails longer. And his eyes, they had turned slitted and red. The telltale signs of the influence of the 9-tailed fox and its chakra. I see you've learned to use the power of your demon. But will one measly tail make a difference? I think not, Orochimaru said. Naruto growled in favor of returning the verbal spar. He launched himself at Orochimaru, foregoing his jutsu and weapons in favor of trying to swipe the Sannin's head clean off. The taijutsu spar that followed could only be described as ferocious. Orochimaru blocked one powerful punch and decided that dodging would probably be the better way to go. He wove in and out, side to side, even corkscrewing his body at one point to dodge. Eventually, the Kyuubi-enhanced punches caught up to him though, and he wore several fists to the face, and a claw swipe across his chest. Blood seeped from the claw marks, and he used his tongue to lick it up, shuddering from the pleasure. You have so much potential, Naruto-kun. But I'm not here to see what you're capable of today, as fun as it's been. Orochimaru said. Now, allow me to show you what I was going to show Sasuke. True power. Once again, the snake summoner flared his chakra. The density of it seemed to weigh down the air itself. Naruto was protected from the effects of it inside the 9 tails chakra though, and launched himself at Orochimaru yet again. The Sannin grinned as the Jinchuriki flew at him, and easily sidestepped his first punch, and his second and third. Naruto tried to roundhouse kick him in the head, only for it to be ducked. Orochimaru slithered around all his attacks, before finally unleashing his own. The kick to his chest was the hardest he'd ever received, and he felt several ribs break without resistance. Even as he flew through the air, he felt his ribs heal. Before he could even land, Orochimaru was standing where he was projected to fall, and delivered a vicious punch to his face. The pain was there, but it was greatly dulled by the 9 tails, even as he cratered into the ground below. He simply was outmatched in taijutsu, and even through his building anger he could see that. As the Sannin descended on him like a fallen angel, he ran through hand signs. He wasn't coherent enough to shout, or even whisper the name, but in his mind there was nothing but the shout of the jutsu name. Wind release, great breakthrough. It was his most powerful jutsu in his affinity. Amped by the 1-tailed chakra cloak, it would be enough to knock down trees. He exhaled, blowing as much wind as possible as he could out of his mouth, straight at the Sannin. The effect was immediate. The wind jutsu shot out of him like a bullet the size of a large train. Everything in the immediate area was blown away. Trees uprooted or snapped under the pressure of the wind jutsu. The ground itself was torn up by its power, leaving a trench. As it reached the falling Orochimaru, the man had a sickening smile on his face as he finished his own jutsu. Fire release, majestic destroyer flame. The massive A-rank fire jutsu met the wind jutsu head-on. It was powerful enough that it quickly overtook Naruto's wind, thanks to its elemental advantage. The great wave of flames incinerated everything in its path on its way back to Naruto. The blonde could do nothing as the scorching jutsu overtook and completely enveloped him. It felt as if his very being was on fire. Like his skin was searing several times over, and his organs were going to boil and explode. Even as the fire jutsu was killing him, the Nine Tails chakra was saving him, fixing the cells even as they died. It was excruciating. Just when he thought the onslaught would never end, the flames died down. His bubbling red chakra cloak was gone, as was a large portion of his clothing, barely leaving enough for him to be considered decent. His body was smoking, his skin was red, and he felt like he'd just gone days without sleep. It wasn't over yet though, and he tried to summon more of his tenant's chakra. All he saw of Orochimaru was a streak, before he was on him. He couldn't even react as the Sannin's glowing fingers slammed into his gut. Five-finger seal, he said neutrally. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. I'd love to stay and play with Jiraiya's toy some more, but you see, I came here with a goal in mind. A mission if you will. I'm after Sasuke's Sharingan, and nothing will get in my way, especially a little Jinchuriki brat. So why don't you just go to sleep? The Sannin turned his back as Naruto began to collapse to his knees and fall forward. The blonde fought with everything he had, trying to stay conscious. His team needed him. He couldn't leave Sasuke and Hinata hanging. It was a losing battle though, and he knew he wouldn't be able to hold on long enough to help. With any luck, help would already be on the way after he flared the Kyuubi's chakra like that. A familiar signature hopped up next to him. The surveillance toad he had summoned. With the last of his strength, he delivered a message. Orochimaru, after Sharingan, we'll be fine. Go after him. And he promptly lost consciousness, his covered forehead smacking into the hard dirt. Sasuke hated having to rely on Naruto. He hated Naruto having to rely on the Nine Tails even more. He'd only ever seen him use that shroud once, and Jiraiya had immediately thrown a ceiling tag on him to stop it. Naruto had insisted that he was in control, but the influence it had on him was obvious. Still, if he was willing to go that far for him, they couldn't allow it to go to waste. He and Hinata were slowly trying to get out of the forest. They knew they were closer to the tower than the fence, so they moved towards it, hoping to find help. Their only chance was to find numbers. Nobody in the forest was currently strong enough to defeat Orochimaru on their own, not unless the third Hokage or Jiraiya showed up. They kept tree-hopping blindly, neither having enough chakra to keep their dojutsu active at this point. Even from this far away, they could feel the Kyuubi's chakra. That meant they could feel the moment when it receded. Either Naruto had won and turned it off, or he had lost. As much as he trusted the blonde, he wasn't overly hopeful. They kept going, knowing that's what he would want. It was less than 2 minutes before they were tracked down. They hadn't even seen it coming. One moment they were hopping along, the next, Orochimaru was standing in their path, a grin on his face. Well, he was better than I expected, I'll give him that. I think that fire should put him down for quite a while, if not forever. Orochimaru lied, checking his fingernails for dirt. You bastard, Sasuke screamed. He activated his Sharingan, attempting the last-ditch effort he'd saved chakra for. He wasn't strong enough or quick enough to keep up with the Sannin. His strongest jutsu damaged him for all of 5 seconds. That left one option for him. Genjutsu. He looked Orochimaru in the eye with his 3-tomo Sharingan, weaving the strongest illusion he had. The chakra flowed from his jutsu and into the mind of his opponent. There was hope. He felt it begin to take hold, the snake-like eyes beginning to glaze over. Then it was shattered. One flare of his chakra and it was instantly dispelled. The laugh that came from Orochimaru sounded almost genuine, like he truly thought it was funny. Is that the best you can do, Sasuke-kun? I hear your goal is to kill your brother, but with genjutsu as weak as that, you'll never come close. Itachi of the Sharingan is one of the best users in the world after all. He can even trap me in an illusion. You don't even come close to his strength. By the end of his rant he was sneering at the young Uchiha. Sasuke didn't reply. He dropped to one knee, resting his hand on it as he heaved in large gulps of breath. Beside him, Hinata dropped into a stance. Don't, he said. She understood the meaning but didn't relent. I cannot allow you and Naruto-kun to risk your lives while I sit and watch. You're my family too. And with those words, she charged the Sannin once more. She aimed a blind Juken strike at his heart, hoping against all hope to luck out. She'd done enough training that she didn't need the Byakugan to locate the major organs anymore. Orochimaru caught her by the wrist, and promptly snapped it like a twig. Hinata, to her credit, didn't scream. She just tried to strike at his heart again with the other hand. She almost got there too, before Orochimaru caught and broke that one too. Weak. He spat at her, and he kicked her in the chest a third time. Sasuke could hear the ribs break from 30 feet away. She crashed into the base of the tree, smacking her head against the wall and going still. If she was still conscious, she didn't show any sign of it. Orochimaru silently shunshined to Sasuke, putting his hands in the strange seal again. I can't afford to spend any more time here. I will give you a drop of my power, Sasuke-kun. When you want the real thing, you will seek me out. Before Sasuke could argue, the Sannin's neck extended the short distance to him, and he bit down at the base of Sasuke's neck. The Uchiha felt a strong burning sensation as Orochimaru removed his fangs, and just like that he was gone, not even floating leaves left behind. The burning sensation spread down his arm and into his chest, up into his head, and soon his entire body was filled with it. He writhed and screamed, trying to fight whatever it was that was overtaking his body. Trying to stay conscious so that he could help Hinata and they could find Naruto. He couldn't though, he wasn't strong enough, and eventually he succumbed to the pain and blacked out. Chapter 18. Forest of Death. IV. Hinata came to in the dark. The sensations from the injuries she'd sustained filed in one by one until her breath was caught and her muscles were clenched. It took her several seconds to relax enough to think. Her chakra was still extremely low, and she didn't want to risk using the Byakugan just yet. She drug herself to her feet, a difficult task with 2 broken wrists. Her teammates needed her. A feeling of numbness overtook her as she realized that she might not have any teammates left after what happened. She began to shake. Something within her pushed her to keep moving, because regardless of what happened, it was useless to sit here and do nothing. In the darkness she had a hard time seeing without her dojutsu. She managed to slowly hop to where Sasuke had been when she lost consciousness. She almost stepped on his limp form as she looked, stumbling over his body as she passed. She put her ear to his chest, and then over his mouth. His heart was beating, and he was breathing. He was alive. His heartbeat was erratic, and his body was hot though. It was like he was fighting a bad fever. Better than dead, she reminded herself. She had to find Naruto. She mustered what strength she could, and maneuvered Sasuke onto her back, tucking his arms over her shoulders so she could hold him in place. She had to bite down on the sleeves of both his wrists to do so. She risked activating her eyes for long enough to search for Naruto. She could still remember the area the suffocating demonic chakra had come from, so she started her search there. It didn't take long. The area she located him in was completely and utterly devoid of life. Every tree in the vicinity was either missing or completely burned down. There was no grass left, only scorched earth. Everything was black and turned to ash. She turned her eyes off, already having memorized the spot, and took off with a vigor that betrayed her current state. She hopped from tree to tree, and within a few minutes, she'd made her way to him. She made it to his side, and slid Sasuke off as gently as she could. The moment she looked at Naruto, tears began to run down her cheeks. He was in worse shape than Sasuke. His skin was blistered all over. There were very few places on his body that didn't appear to be burned completely. His skin was red in most spots, black in others. She wasn't sure how long it had been since she lost consciousness, but his body was still steaming. That couldn't be a good sign. She risked the Byakugan one more time, and scanned Naruto's body as quickly as possible. The damage was bad. Torn muscles, fractured bones, burned chakra coils. He was in bad shape, but it looked like everything had already started to heal considerably. Thank God for the 9-tailed fox. Ever so quickly it passed through her mind that she was probably the first member of the Leaf Village to ever think that. Her Byakugan forcibly deactivated as she ran too low on chakra. Her vision got bright, despite the late hour and lack of dojutsu. She dropped to one knee, the lightheadedness threatening to overtake her once more. She pressed a palm into the ground to try and balance and center herself. She could not afford to pass out again. Her teammates needed her. Deep, slow breaths fought off the worst of it. Then, out of the blue, they were on them. She was in no position to fight, and didn't make any sort of indication that she knew they were there. At least maybe she could surprise them by pretending not to notice. She risked an upward glance, and was relieved to see it was a team of Leaf Anbu. She raised her head to signal she was still conscious. A ninja with a monkey mask made his way over to her. Hyuga. Status report. His voice was near emotionless. Likely a captain then. Good. She took another deep breath, and spoke slowly. Orochimaru attacked us. Naruto-kun used his tenet to fend him off but was defeated, I don't know how. Sasuke-kun was bitten by Orochimaru in the neck and has a strange mark there. They're both in need of healing badly. I sustained injuries to both wrists, my chest, and head. I can go without healing if need be. Orochimaru got away. The Anbu captain nodded. Behind him, 2 more Anbu were already running glowing green hands over her teammates. She relaxed just a fraction. I can begin healing you, the captain said. She nodded in return, and flopped back onto her back. It was likely the least graceful thing she had ever done. She couldn't find it in herself to care at the moment. Soon, the soothing feeling of the medical ninjutsu made her feel much better. Her wrists stiffened back to the way they'd been before, her ribs began to dull to an ache that made breathing less of a burden. The massive headache she didn't know she had receded to a survivable level. The lightheadedness faded slightly, and she relaxed a little more. Captain. One of the Anbu interrupted the healing session, though the captain didn't make any sort of inclination that he noticed. The Uchiha? There's some sort of seal on his neck. I'm not well versed in fuinjutsu, but there's definitely a foreign chakra coming from it. The monkey-masked captain didn't say anything for a few seconds. I'm no fuinjutsu expert either. We would need Jiraiya-sama honestly, or maybe Genma. Neither of them are in the village at the moment though. He said. Hinata debated about whether she should speak up. She ultimately decided that if she were in her teammate's position, she would want either of them to do it. She sat up onto her knees and spoke. Naruto-kun has been trained by Jiraiya-sama of the legendary Sannin in fuinjutsu. She laid it on as thick as possible. It was the only way to convince an Anbu. He also has access to the old Uzumaki texts on the subject, given that he is a member of the clan. He will likely have a good idea of what's going on, better than anybody you could call upon in short notice. Of course, the Sandaime was no slouch at fuinjutsu either, and definitely was above Naruto's level. She just had to convince them that Naruto could handle it. She'd have to play this carefully. Well, the other medic spoke up. He's in pretty bad shape, but he's healing abnormally fast. I've sped it up as much as I can and healed all the dangerous injuries. Should wake up after a day or 2 in the hospital. He's always healed fast, he'll be fine by tomorrow. I'm sure of it. Look at the jutsu that did this to him. She gestured to the surrounding area. Should he even be alive, let alone look as good as he does? Hinata said. The Anbu shook his head ever so subtly. She turned her attention to the more pressing matter. What about Sasuke? Will he be okay? Sasuke's medic, a man wearing the mask of a bird she couldn't identify, spoke up again. He's just got a fever and general combat damage. He scratched the back of his head. I healed a majority of it and helped out with the fever. The seal is beyond me. Orochimaru probably sealed his chakra or something so he can't use jutsu. He should be just fine though. Hinata let loose the final breath that she had been holding as gently and evenly as she could. Please allow us to finish the exams then, Hinata said, bowing as properly as she could from her position kneeling on the ground. If Naruto and Sasuke will be physically fine, and Naruto can handle the seal, there's no reason we should be disqualified. That's a bad idea. The Hokage will want to hear about this, the captain said. Naruto had summoned a surveillance toad. It will have reported this to Jiraiya-sama and Hokage-sama by now. The full report can wait a few days while we finish the exam. It won't be any trouble for us to find another scroll, she said. Naruto had been holding onto their heaven scroll in the pouch he'd worn for the exam. If it was still in the forest, it would have been turned to ash by now. The monkey Anbu seemed to consider this. After several moments, his shoulders slumped slightly and he let out a sigh. Naruto has been good to Konohamaru, especially since his parents' death. Better than anybody else outside of his family at any rate. Our clan will not forget that. You will be allowed to complete the exam. You will not continue through any other incident like this again though. If you need help just open a scroll, it will summon a proctor. Hinata nodded and bowed lower, thanking him profusely. She was confident she could take care of the boys until they awoke. She had become somewhat proficient in medical ninjutsu. The Anbu helped move them east, into the trunk at the base of a large tree. It would provide cover from at least 3 directions, though it did limit their escape. Once they left, she went about setting up several traps, including some tags that Naruto had given her before the exam started. When she was satisfied that they were as well defended as possible, she turned her attention back to her teammates. Naruto's burns had receded, but the worst of them, the ones on his forearms, could still use some attention. She pulled out the medicinal cream that she had made just for such circumstances. She rubbed it over his arms, and a few spots on his chest and abdomen, making sure to rub the cream in thoroughly. She was proud that she only slightly blushed at the action. Sasuke's fever seemed stable for the moment, so she just ran a diagnostic jutsu over him. His injuries had healed well, just as the Anbu had said. With nothing left for her to do, she ran a quick scout over the nearby area using her Byakugan. She kept active for as little time as possible, exhaustion already setting in. She found nothing and decided sleep was for the best. They wouldn't have any sort of watch, but with Naruto's traps and barriers, as well as her traditional traps, they should be safe for a few hours at least. She wouldn't be any good if she didn't recover, and it's not like she could wake them up to move even if she did see something. She laid down in front of her teammates, determined to protect, even if that meant just putting her body in front of theirs while they slept. Sleep came almost overwhelmingly quick, and she was asleep within seconds. Hinata awoke some hours later, to light streaming onto her face. It couldn't have been that long then. If it were noon, the light wouldn't reach her like this. She quickly gathered her bearings. Her chakra was refilling, though not full. None of the traps had been sprung, nor was there any other sign of intruders. That was a relief. She moved on to Naruto, as he'd gotten the worst of things. She checked his vitals with a diagnostic jutsu, and found that he seemed well off enough. The bones and muscles seemed to have healed most of the way. That was odd though, they should have been healed all the way by now. She checked his burns and found that they'd made significant progress but also weren't healed. She frowned. That was not the norm for Naruto. It was rare that he cloaked himself in the fox's chakra though, maybe it needed time to recharge? She moved to Sasuke, since Naruto seemed well off enough for now. She didn't like what she saw. He was sweating through his shirt, and he had a high fever. Now that she had chakra, she activated her eyes and scanned his body. His heart was beating much too fast for sleep, his muscles were clenching, and that chakra in the seal was seeping into him. She didn't like that one bit. She got to work on healing him, fighting the fever first, as that was the most dangerous. It was a battle, and after only a few minutes she began to sweat. She succeeded though, at least in lowering the fever. Sasuke stopped sweating, though his body still seemed to be fighting. She tried to get his muscles to relax, but she wasn't advanced enough to cause the brain to trigger it. She strongly considered sealing off his chakra points. She couldn't do it in the heat of battle just yet, not consistently at least, but she could do it to a stationary target. If she succeeded though, the chakra leaking from the seal might pool up and then release into his system all at once when his tenketsu reopened. That could have disastrous results, and may even kill him. Bad idea. She resolved to just keep checking on the two every so often to make sure they were okay, while resting herself so she could fully regain her chakra. Her wrists weren't fully healed yet, and neither were her ribs. If she could get above a certain point in her reserves, she could spare the chakra to heal herself. They had enough food to last several days, so she could spare the resting time to watch over her teammates. She sat cross-legged between her two teammates and centered herself. Deep breaths in, deep breaths out. Everything would be okay. Her teammates would be okay. They were strong, stronger than her, and she had faith in them. She sat like this for a while. It could have been hours, it could have been less. She wasn't too concerned about keeping track of time at the moment. They had plenty of time to finish the test. They could afford to lay around for a day. At some point while she was waiting, she regained the rest of her chakra and was able to periodically activate her Byakugan to scout the area. The tags that Naruto had given her seemed to be working. She had yet to spot a single person coming near them. The barrier sealed in their presence, so it wouldn't physically stop anybody from coming near them. It would, however, stop anybody from sensing them as long as they weren't expelling a lot of chakra. She occasionally would take the time to hop in and attempt to help her teammates out in the healing process. Sasuke needed continuous help with the fever that he was fighting, which was making her increasingly more worried. After 2 quick sessions, Naruto seemed to be completely healed from his burns, though he still wasn't waking up. She was less worried about him. He'd fought one of Konoha's greatest traitors and likely would have died if it weren't for the tailed beast that he housed. The stress alone from that fight could put anybody to sleep for a while. He was Naruto though, and healways came through. He'd yet to fail any of them. Not in the Genin test, not on their first C rank. Not even in Wave, when it looked as if they were all headed for an early grave. He would be okay. He had to be. It was several hours after the sun had reached its highest peak when Sasuke took a turn for the worst. She'd been doing her breathing exercises, letting her chakra regain from the latest round of scouting the nearby area. He started twitching in his sleep, and his breathing grew ragged. She checked on him, only to find that his fever had skyrocketed. He was burning up, all through his body. She went to work trying to quell his reaction, but his body jerked and he turned on his side. A vile, cold chakra began leaking out of his body in waves as he screamed. His body curled up into a fetal position as it tensed against itself. It was like his body was rejecting the chakra. That's when it hit her. It was rejecting the chakra. The chakra from the mark that Orochimaru had put on him. She'd been so foolish to think that she could even begin to understand what was going on with that. She should have let the Anbu disqualify him, or at least ask them to watch over them. The chakra being expelled from Sasuke grew stronger. It was a steady stream now, and she didn't know what to do. She had been counting on Naruto to be able to seal off the mark or at least know what to do with it. She was in over her head, and now her teammate was in trouble because of it. To make things worse, as Sasuke continued to scream and thrash, she sensed the presence of another team behind them. The barrier had failed. It couldn't contain the extreme chakra that Sasuke was outputting. Well, what do we have here? A ninja with a sound headband said. His voice was tough to hear through the copious amount of bandages wrapped around his face, but she could tell it was cocky, and that made her nervous. It's about time we found them. The kunoichi of the group huffed. The boss didn't tell us they'd be so hard to locate. Hinata went from nervous to afraid. If they'd been looking for them, and on orders of a boss, that couldn't be good. Whether that meant they were sent by Orochimaru or the leaders of their village, she was in trouble. They wouldn't have been sent after them if their leader didn't think they could handle the 3. She almost hoped that Orochimaru had been the one to send them. At least then they were sent just to defeat her. A team that was confident that they could take out Naruto and Sasuke would have been too much for her. As it was, she was in trouble. She still had one trap laid that they hadn't bypassed, and their apparent arrogance would play right into it. TCH. I thought we were here to kill the Uchiha? It won't be any fun if we just get to fight one little girl. The final member of their team said. He by far had the cockiest attitude of the 3. Quiet, Zaku. If he's not able to fight, that makes our job that much easier. The bandaged genin said. The genin, Zaku apparently, rolled his eyes but remained quiet. Hinata watched, and waited patiently for them to make their move. The bandaged genin raised his gauntlet. Now, little girl, prepare yourself for death. He tensed his muscles to launch himself at her. Hinata saw the muscle contractions with her Byakugan, and she used a quick pulse of chakra from her extended fingers to cut the rope next to her. Kunai flashed through the air, flying rapidly at the sound ninja who had just begun his charge. The bandaged ninja simply quickly strafed to the left, dodging the 3 kunai, while continuing his sprint. Much to his surprise, there were 20 more kunai heading straight at him from his adjusted position. The spread of them was such that we wouldn't be able to dodge left or right. That left up, down, or back the way he came. He wasn't much of an earth user, and retreating was never in the cards for him. He coiled his muscles and used a burst of chakra to leap up into the air. Hinata saw the smirk on the sound ninja's face as he soared through the air. She also saw how short-lived it was as he saw the massive log swinging from the top of the forest straight at him. She was surprised though when the log exploded, and he dropped softly to the forest floor. Ha ha ha, he laughed, almost maniacally. It'll take more than a little tree from a little girl to take out a sound ninja. Come on, Dosu. Stop playing with your food. We have a mission. the kunoichi said. It was Hinata's turn to showcase a small smirk though. The destroyed log that she had set as a trap had scattered all over the area, including right next to and behind Dosu. With her right hand she formed a half-ram seal and channeled her chakra. The exploding tags she had placed on the log exploded, and all chaos broke loose. There were tags close enough to all three of her enemies to at least cause confusion. Dosu himself had been struck by the blast, throwing him sideways. His two teammates had just been distracted by nearby blasts, and blinded by the smoke they created. It was them that Hinata locked in on. As she rushed them, she ran through calculations and scenarios in her head. Dosu seemed to be a close-range shinobi, unlikely to have a wind or earth element. He was a much more known commodity to her at this point, so she would bypass him for now. It didn't hurt that he'd been tossed aside by an explosion either. Between the two teammates left, Hinata would have to play the odds. She didn't know what either of them were capable of, so she would assume the kunoichi was support. She hated thinking that way. She didn't see herself as weak anymore, and she didn't see her female classmates as weak either. The logic said that it was the most likely scenario though that the kunoichi wouldn't be the big hitter. That left the third shinobi, one who hadn't been named yet. She'd graded him as the most cocky, despite the fact that Dosu was clearly the leader. He had a thin frame, and was clearly at least 2 years older than her. He'd shown her nothing, other than his arrogance, but she'd have to assume he was a greater threat than her female teammate. His frame indicated that he could be a distance fighter, which only solidified her decision. As the smoke cleared, she breached through the remnants of it at top speed. She planted both feet firmly, transferring her momentum to her upper body. All that speed turned to power, and she lashed out at him. His eyes widened in surprise, but he couldn't do anything to dodge the thrashing she put on him. 4 strikes and he dropped like his muscles had been turned to jello. She had been in a rush and couldn't put him down for good, but it would buy her time. She quickly pivoted, flowing through footwork, and dashed at the kunoichi. The smoke had cleared, and no doubt the ringing that would have been in her ears had too, so Hinata moved quickly. She dodged several senbon from the enemy. The look of surprise on the girl's face indicated that she hadn't been prepared for her to move that fast. Hinata struck once to each shoulder, and was preparing a palm strike to her just when suddenly she was struck from the side. She stumbled back several steps. Their teammate had recovered that fast? He'd taken a legitimate exploding tag from close up, not just a residual blast. "Ya see, little girl. This gauntlet of mine allows me to bend sound waves and vibrations to my will. Before the explosion hit me, I cushioned myself with my gauntlet. It still tossed me aside, but the explosion didn't do any damage." The cockiness was gone, replaced by a cold and deep explanation, with very little emotion. There was anger in there though, and she could use that. She went to make a move against him, but her balance was gone. The low ring in her ears increased, as did the pain that accompanied it. She tried to take another step and nearly fell over. The pain in her head reached an apex, and she half grunted half squealed trying to keep the grunt in. "Oh, did I mention that the attack I hit you with goes straight at your inner ear? It's impossible to dodge and impossible to block," Dosu said. Hinata could barely hear him though. She had to deactivate her Bukagen to deal with the stress, but she only lasted a few more seconds on her feet. She collapsed to her hands and knees, puking up that rations that had been sustaining her for the last meal or two. Seems even the fabled Byakugan fails to stack up against my jutsu," Dosu said calmly. The calm was quickly lost as he viciously kicked her in her already damaged ribs. There was a loud crack as they broke, and a thud that accompanied her crashing into a tree. She fell to the ground and laid still. Tch, these leaf nin are so soft. It's a miracle their village is still standing. The ninja Hinata took down first had recovered from the ground. "She took you down just fine, Zaku," the kunoichi said. Yeah kin, woman power and all that." Zaku waved a hand at her dismissively. He walked towards Hinata, ignoring his teammate rolling her eyes at him. He was walking with a slight limp and nursing his right shoulder as he moved. "Let's put her down and move on to the Uchiha." He held up his left hand, preparing to launch a jutsu at her. He was frozen in place when a dark presence washed over the area. The whole sound team was caught in it. It froze them, and though they wouldn't ever admit it, they felt a chill go up their spine. You think we're weak? A voice came from behind them. It hadn't dropped yet, but it still felt ominous to them. They turned their heads, to find Sasuke Uchiha glowering at them, Sharingan shining. Before any of them could respond, Sasuke blurred into motion. The beatdown they received would be one that they wouldn't soon forget. Sasuke's movements were but a blur to them. A punch to the ribs, kick to the knee, elbow to the head. He was disappearing and reappearing before their very eyes. Like a wraith in the night. Dosu was put on his back after a particularly vicious combo ending with Sasuke dropping to the ground and landing a toe kick to the chin. Kin was already unconscious. Sasuke turned to the last member of the sound team. Zaku was trembling in fear before the red eyes of the last loyal Uchiha. Sasuke's three-tomo words slowly and smoothly as he picked up every tiny movement, every piece of information that the enemy's body and chakra revealed. Zaku lifted his hands to blast his slicing airwaves. Stay away from us, you monster. His chakra charged up to fire his jutsu. Sasuke moved. The Uchiha was faster. Zaku felt pain in his arms, but he wasn't sure how. One moment he was ready to decapitate the crazed genin, the next his arms were wrenched behind his back and he felt a foot on his back. You seem to be very proud of these arms of yours. A cold voice said. It'd be a shame if something happened to them. Now that Sasuke had finally stopped moving, it could be seen that there were black ink-like flame designs dancing across the left side of his face and neck. He saw the fear in Zaku's eyes. He could see it in his quivering body. He was defeated. Sasuke should let him go with a warning. Something whispered in his mind though. Something sinister. Something right. You want power, don't you, Sasuke-kun? True power is ruthless. Sasuke found himself agreeing gleefully in his head. The arms broke with a sickening crunch, only drowned out by the sound of Zaku's screaming. Sasuke ignored him, thinking him too pathetic for his attention. He turned to Dosu, who was wearily sitting up. Get out of my sight. He allowed Dosu and Kin to scramble to pick up their sobbing teammate, before adding. Leave the scroll. He turned to Stridid to check on Hinata, paying no further attention to the sound trio. As he walked towards his teammate, he felt the burning on his face recede down to a single point on his neck, where it burned as if he had been branded. He pushed it to the back of his mind though, he had to help his teammates. Naruto stirred several times before waking. Before he could even open his eyes all the way he was being hugged by Hinata. It took him a few more seconds to realize that she was fighting back tears. Don't worry, Hinata, I'm fine. I always am, you know that. He was strangely calm considering the last thing he remembered was fighting Orochimaru. He guessed that if the snake was still around he would already be dead. Plus his natural sensing ability wasn't picking up any foreign signatures in the area. The fact that he awoke to Hinata hugging him certainly didn't worry him either. She slowly pulled away from him, grimacing as she did so. I know, Naruto-kun. I always had faith that you would be okay. My ribs are still broken though. Naruto immediately was reminded of the whooping they had received from his godfather's old teammate. A slow rage began to build within him. That bastard snake, I swear when I get my hands on him again it's not gonna be pretty. He sneered. Actually my ribs had healed from that. She corrected ever so politely. She then proceeded to give him the rundown on everything that had happened since he had fallen unconscious. She left out the details of Sasuke's fight, as she hadn't actually seen any of it, being unconscious herself. As she finished her recounting, Sasuke strolled into their new encampment with a handful of strange-looking fruit. He tossed a large apple-like piece to Naruto and Hinata alike. Glad to see you're awake, Naruto. Sasuke said genuinely, as if I'd let you guys have all the fun in this bloody forest. He flashed a foxy grin. What happened in your fight with the sound ninja anyway? Sasuke's face darkened ever so slightly, but to Naruto he might as well have telegraphed him his feelings. I took care of them. They won't bother us again. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. You didn't, you know. Did you? A subtle shake of his head sent Sasuke's black locks swaying back and forth lightly, as if a soft breeze had tousled them. Naruto got the message and let it drop. For now at least, let me see the seal that the snake stuck you with. He maneuvered to Sasuke's side, as his teammate removed his shirt to give Naruto an unobstructed view. Naruto asked him a series of questions pertaining to the seal. Sasuke answered with a series of grunts and hns that anybody other than Team 7 wouldn't have been able to understand. Naruto looked perplexed after several minutes of looking it over. It's extremely complex. I can't tell exactly what it is. I can tell that it will activate and unfold who knows what if you start running low on chakra, but without having that happen I can't get a good read on it. He turned to Hinata. You said it's leaking chakra? She nodded precisely. It's almost like it's feeding chakra into his system, but that doesn't make sense. Why would he want to give him chakra? She asked. Sasuke remained quiet through the wild conversation. Well, Naruto said, better have Pervy Sage take a look at it when we get back to the tower. If he was anywhere near the village when we got attacked, he's probably already waiting for us there. Naruto said, I can seal all your chakra first so that you can't use it. That will definitely prevent it from activating, but you obviously won't be able to use it if we have to fight. Leave it, I know my limits. Sasuke answered rather shortly, even for him. Naruto frowned minutely, nodded his head in agreement. Yeah, alright, let's move then. And with that, Team 7 shot off into the trees. They would arrive at the tower less than 2 hours later without seeing another person the whole way. And that concludes part 3 of this story. Thank you for spending your time here at Ichiraku Ramen and listening all the way to the end. Your support helps keep these stories alive and allows the shinobi world to continue through new adventures and alternate timelines. If you enjoyed positive intervention, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. Once again, full credit goes to Stolen Hawk 22, the original writer of this story. If you would like to read the original version, you can find the link to the story in the description below. Let me know in the comments what story you would like to hear next. Until the next time, stay safe, and I'll see you again at Ichiraku Ramen.